The gold-framed mirror was installed for one reason. Nobody in that mansion knew what it was for, except him. Amber Powell is 25 years old, Black American. 6 months ago, she married Kang Jun-ho, the quiet head of the K-Mafia dynasty. In the underworld, they call him the Quiet One. A black koi tattoo curls down the side of his neck and disappears under his collar. Every morning he leaves for the office. Every morning the twins come for her. Soo-jin and Soo-ah, 19 years old, designer bags, wine-red lips, smiles for their brother, venom for his wife. He only married you out of charity. Your children will be a stain on the Kang portrait. You're too dark to sit at the main table. Amber says nothing. She swallows it. She protects the marriage. She refuses to start a war inside the house. But the housekeeper sees. Ji-won-han witnesses one attack in the tea room. She records the corridors in silence. She slips a small device onto Jun-ho's desk with a folded note. Jun-ho listens. Jun-ho does not raise his voice. Jun-ho orders a huge antique gold-framed mirror installed on the central wall of the reception gallery, angled toward the nook behind the folding screen. And then Amber finds something in the family foundation's accounts. Something the twins never expected anyone to see. What happens the afternoon Jun-ho comes home early changes everything. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Amber's fingers found the edge of the sheet before her eyes opened. 6 months of marriage had taught her that trick. Locate the fabric first, then the room, then the man beside her. The linen was cool. The room smelled of cedar and the faint iron of city rain still hanging in the drapes from the night before. She turned her head an inch. Jun-ho was already awake. He lay on his back with one arm behind his head, the other resting flat against the mattress between them. The collar of his shirt was open. The koi tail on his neck curled just above the white cotton, a small black comma of ink she had come to read like a barometer of his mood. Visible meant private, hidden meant work. This morning it was visible. Barely. You were counting, he said. His voice was low, not a whisper. Korean accented English. Precise. I wasn't. You count the seconds before you open your eyes. Since April. She smiled without meaning to. He noticed things she thought she had buried. It was the reason she had married him, and the reason she had learned, in 6 months, to guard the smaller corners of her mind. Bad habit, she said. Keep it. He turned his hand, palm up, and she laid hers into it. The gold band on his ring finger touched the gold band on hers. He closed his fingers once, then let go, and swung his legs over the side of the bed. That was how he ended every morning. One closing, one release, and the day started. She watched him cross the room in his bare feet. Broad shoulders, the dry line of his waist under the shirt, the tapered black hair he never fussed with. He picked up the jacket draped over the chair without checking the pockets. He never checked the pockets. Someone had done that for him already, downstairs, and he trusted it, and she had learned not to ask about the someone. Breakfast, he said without turning. In 10 minutes. I have 12. He paused at the door. The twins are downstairs. I heard them come in at 3. They will be tired. They are never tired around me. He said nothing for a beat. He rested his hand on the doorframe. The koi shifted with the tendon in his neck. Do you want me to speak to them? No. He nodded once and left. Amber lay another moment in the emptied room. She counted again, without meaning to. On 7, she got up. She dressed slowly. Ivory silk midi with the wide straps she liked, thin gold band, the small pearl earrings her mother had sent from Detroit the week of the wedding. She parted her hair down the center with the tail of a comb, the way she had done since she was 14. In the mirror, her face looked back at her, softly tapered jaw, the small mole she had never wanted to hide, lips still bare. She glossed them once, rose pink, restrained. She had learned that too, in 6 months. Restraint was the language of this house. The staircase spiraled in dark walnut down 3 floors. She counted the steps out of habit, 32, and by the 20th she could already hear the twins. They were laughing at something on a phone. Soo-jin sat on the arm of the long cream sofa in the gallery, one leg swinging, an oversized cream leather bag slouched at her heels with its gold clasp glinting. Sua sat on the sofa itself, folded sideways, feet tucked up under her. Both were in short designer dresses that had clearly not gone to bed. Both had not removed the wine-red lipstick from the night before, and it had bled a little into the corners of their mouths. They saw her at the same moment. The laughter stopped, the smiles stayed. "Oh," Sujin said, "the wife." "Good morning," Amber said. "Very good morning," Sua echoed, and the smile stretched. Sujin held her phone up as if to show something, then lowered it before Amber could look. "We were about to go up," she said, "but you came down first." "How thoughtful." "Coffee?" Amber said, and moved past them toward the breakfast room. They rose without answering. Sua brushed past first. Her shoulder grazed Amber's arm. Light, deliberate, the exact pressure of someone testing a door. The oversized bag on Sujin's shoulder swung as she followed, and the gold clasp knocked once against Amber's hip. "Sorry, Unnie," Sujin said, in a voice that was not sorry. Amber kept walking. In the breakfast room, Junho was already standing at the sideboard, a small cup in his hand, dressed. Bespoke black suit, crisp white shirt, thin black tie. The koi tail was gone under the collar. The barometer had turned. He set the cup down when he saw her. "Sit," he said. He held the chair. She sat. He pushed it in half an inch. He didn't sit himself. He looked at the door behind her. The twins came in a moment later, all sugar. "Appa," Sujin said, and swept over to kiss the air beside his cheek. Sua did the same on the other side. "Sit," he said again. They sat opposite Amber. Jiwon Han, the head housekeeper, brought the tray. Small woman, black uniform with the white collar, hair in a strict low bun, the silver cross at her throat. She poured Junho's coffee first, then Amber's, then the twins. She did not smile at anyone, but her hazel brown eyes rested a half-second longer on Amber than on the sisters, and she moved to Amber's side of the table when she set out the milk. It was the smallest gesture. Amber had learned to see it. "Thank you, Jiwon-si," Amber said in careful Korean. Jiwon bowed and left. Junho watched the twins over the rim of his cup. "Where were you last night?" "Out," Sujin said. "Where?" "With friends, Oppa. The new place in Cheongdam. You would hate it." He looked at Sua. "With Sujin," Sua said. He set the cup down. "Curfew is 1. "There is no curfew," Sujin said, and rolled the phrase like it was a joke he was in on. He didn't smile. "Curfew is 1," he said again. The twins nodded, slowly, in a way that was not agreement. Amber watched the small movement of Sujin's jaw, the little grind. The girl was 19 and did not know yet that grinding her jaw at her brother was a mistake. Or she knew, and she wanted the mistake. Amber couldn't tell which was worse. Junho drank the last of the coffee standing. He touched the back of Amber's neck once, quickly, with 2 fingers. It was the whole goodbye. Then he was out the door and the twins listened to his footsteps cross the marble hall, until the front door opened and closed, and a car started in the drive. The car pulled away. Sujin looked at Amber. "So," she said, and settled her chin in her palm. "Just us." Amber lifted her cup. "You look tired, Unnie," Sujin said. "Married life?" "I slept well." "He came home late again? Poor thing. He has so much to carry. He always comes home." Sujin traced the rim of her own cup with a lacquered fingernail. "That is one way to see it." Sua giggled behind her hand. Amber did not lift her eyes from her cup. She had learned that trick too. Do not offer the eyes. Eyes were a currency in this house, and she had decided, in the first month, not to spend hers on the twins. "Are you free today, Unnie?" Sujin said. "I have letters." "Letters?" Sujin repeated it as if the word were foreign. "How very 50s of you." "Foundation letters." "Ah, the foundation." Sujin smiled a little wider. "You know Appa lets you sit at that desk because he thinks it is charming." Sua's giggle again. Amber set the cup down. She rose. "Enjoy your morning," she said. She was halfway across the gallery when Sujin called after her. "Unnie." Amber paused. "He married you because it made him look kind. You know that, right?" The sentence hung in the air between the ceiling and the marble. Sua made a small, satisfied sound, like a cat curling deeper into a cushion. Amber did not turn around. She walked the rest of the way to the study and closed the door behind her, softly, the way she had been taught by her mother, who had cleaned houses for people who threw doors at their children. Inside the study, she stood very still, with her hand still on the knob. She counted to 7. She let go. Then she crossed to the desk and sat and opened the top drawer and pulled out the notebook where she wrote her foundation letters. She uncapped the fountain pen. Her hand was steady. She had made it steady. The first letter of the morning went to a shelter in Incheon. She wrote in a neat, careful English that would be translated into Korean by the office in Seoul. She thanked the director for the quarterly report. She asked about the 7 girls who had aged out of the program in May. She asked their names. She always asked the names. Halfway through the second letter, the door opened without a knock. "We are going to Cheongdam again," Sua said, framed in the doorway with her jacket already on. "We took the card." "Which card?" "Yours." Amber set the pen down. "That is Appa's card," Sua said, and smiled. "You know that. He gave it to you. He gave it to me too, in a way. So it is the same card. Ask him. He is busy. Then wait." "Unimi," Sua tilted her head. "You are not the mother here." She left the door open when she walked away. From the corridor, Amber heard Sujin's voice, high and easy. Did she cry? Almost. Almost. Their heels went down the marble. Amber sat with her hand flat on the notebook until the sound of them faded. Then she picked up the pen and finished the second letter. Then a third. Then a fourth. She did not stop until her wrist ached, and when it ached, she flexed her fingers once and started the fifth. She did not cry. At noon, Chi-won brought her a tray, small bowl of rice, a cut pear, a pot of barley tea. She set it on the desk and did not leave immediately. She stood with her hands folded in front of her uniform. "Madam," she said. Then, quieter, "Sajangnim ordered a car for you at 3. He said you asked about the new gallery near the river." "I did not ask." Ji-won's eyes moved a fraction. "He said you would want to go." Amber understood. He had ordered her a car because she had not left the house in 4 days. "Thank you, Ji-won-si." He also said. Ji-won hesitated, and then chose her English carefully. "The twins used the black card at Galleria last night, 3 times. Ah, the card is on the account you share. He has not seen the statement." "Thank you." Ji-won bowed and turned. At the door she paused. "Madam, I cleaned the tea room after them." Amber lifted her eyes. "I hear them," Ji-won said, and she left. Amber stared at the closed door for a long moment. She did not eat the pear. She drank the barley tea and returned to the 5th letter, and when the 5th was done, she wrote a 6th to a small library in Busan and a 7th to a Detroit clinic her mother had once mentioned in a Sunday phone call. She addressed the 7th in her mother's handwriting from memory, checked it, and copied it into her own again. Her mother had never asked what kind of house Amber had married into. Her mother had asked, once, if the man was gentle. Amber had said yes. It had not been a lie. At 2:45, she heard the twins come back into the house long enough to change and leave again with 2 friends she did not recognize. Their laughter went through the front door like water going through a broken window. Amber counted her letters. 7. She sealed them and slid them into the leather portfolio for the courier and did not look at the clock. The next morning was worse. She came down the stairs in a nude silk dress this time, the little pearl earrings, the same gold band. In the gallery, Madame Hyaja Kang was already seated in the high-back chair by the window, the plum hanbok arranged around her, the single strand of pearls at her throat, the jade ring on her right hand catching the light as she turned a page of a book. "Eo meonim," Amber said, and bowed. The old woman looked up. She did not smile, but her eyes softened by a degree Amber had learned to read as approval. "You are early," Madame Kang said. "I could not sleep." The old woman closed the book on her finger. "My son left at 5. "Yes." "He kissed you before?" "He touched my neck." Madame Kang smiled at that, a small, private smile. "That is his father. His father did the same. 2 fingers. She lifted her own 2 fingers, showed them, dropped them. Never more. Never less. Amber allowed herself, for a moment, to feel warm. Then Sujin and Sua came down the stairs. They saw their mother. They straightened. They came into the gallery and bowed correctly, with both hands, and greeted her in soft Korean. Madame Kang blessed them with the smallest nod and returned to her book. Soo-jin turned. She looked at Amber. She smiled, sugar-sweet, and walked past her chair, and as she passed she said, low, in English so their mother could not follow, "Your children will be the stain on the family portrait, Unni. Try not to have any." She kept walking. Sua followed with the tiniest laugh in her throat. Madame Kang looked up. What did she say? She said good morning, Amber said. The old woman studied her a moment. You are a good liar for a woman with an honest face. Iomionim. Don't. The old woman raised the jade ring an inch. I know my daughters. She closed the book. She stood, slowly, and crossed to Amber and rested her hand briefly on Amber's shoulder. The hand was thin and cool. My son knows too, she said. He is only waiting. For what? For the right moment to be very quiet, Madame Kang said, and left the gallery. Amber sat with the sentence for a long time. That afternoon, Soo-jin and Sua left in the Range Rover for a private airfield in Incheon and took a jet to Jeju for the weekend. Amber saw the message on the household chat. 2 seats, a suite, a car waiting. The card on the receipt was Junho's. Amber did not answer the chat. She sat in the study and made a list on the back of an envelope. It was not a list of grievances. It was a list of numbers. Amounts and dates from the foundation ledger she had been quietly reading for 6 weeks. Amounts that did not belong where they were. She held the list in her hand for a long time. Then she folded it into quarters and slid it inside her notebook, under the leather cover, in the pocket with the small seam. She did not tell her husband. Not yet. There was a reason. She had come into this marriage with one promise to herself, and the promise was older than the marriage. Her mother had raised her on it, in the small brick house in Detroit with the kitchen radio always on. Don't make a man fight your battles for you, baby. Fight them beside him. Her mother had said it about her father, who had died when Amber was 11, and Amber had not fully understood it until she stood in a study in Seoul with a list of stolen money on the back of an envelope and a husband downstairs who would burn his own sisters if she asked. She would not ask. She would fight beside him, and to fight beside him she needed to be sure of the numbers, of the accounts, of the trail. She would give him the story finished, not the story raw. She slid the notebook into the drawer. She locked the drawer with the small brass key she wore on a chain under the ivory silk. The third morning, Ji-won came into the tea room while Amber was arranging the flowers Junho had left on the low table. White chrysanthemums, wrapped in brown paper, with no card. There was never a card. There did not need to be. Madam, Ji-won said. She closed the door behind her, which she never did. I need to show you something. Amber set the flowers down. Ji-won drew a small black recording device from the pocket of her uniform. A slim thing, no bigger than a lighter. She laid it on the tea table between them. I put it in the corridor, Ji-won said. Her English was careful, chosen. By the folding screen, where the young ladies stand when Sajang-nim leaves for the office. Amber looked at the device. How long? 3 days. You did this alone? Yes. G1C. Amber's voice was very level. Why? The housekeeper folded her hands. 12 years, madam. I clean this house. I hear things. My mother worked for Sajang-nim's father. I know what a house sounds like when it is turning against itself. I know what it sounds like when a wife is being taught not to speak. She paused. You are being taught not to speak. I chose not to speak. Yes. Ji-won's hazel eyes held steady. That is why I put the device there. Amber looked at the little black rectangle on the tea table. It looked very small for the weight it was carrying. He must not hear it from me, Amber said. He will not. Ji-won lifted the device carefully. I will leave it on his desk with a note. My name, not yours. If he is angry, he will be angry with me. He will not be angry with you. No, madam, I know he will not. They looked at each other. You could lose your position, Amber said. 12 years, madam. I know Sajang-nim. Ji-won's mouth softened, only slightly. I would not risk it if I did not know. Wait. Amber crossed to her writing desk. She opened the top drawer. She took out a fresh sheet of cream paper and wrote 3 lines in her steady, careful English. I did not know this was being recorded. I did not ask for it. It was placed by Ji-won Han. Read it as you wish. She signed her name, Amber Powell Kang, with the small looping A she had used since school. She folded the paper once. She handed it to the housekeeper. Put mine under yours, she said, so he sees mine first. Ji-won inclined her head. Madam. Yes. He is home at 6. I know. Ji-won took the note. She slipped it under her own, so Amber's would sit on top when the folded pages were opened. She tucked both under her palm. Madam, she said, one thing more. Yes. Sejangnim's father. My mother worked for him 30 years. When his brothers moved against him, my mother put a folded paper on his desk. She did not tell him what to do with it. He did what he did. Ji-won's eyes held Amber's. He never asked her again. He also never let her be dismissed. Not for anything. Not until she died. Ji-won C. I am telling you so you understand. This is not the first time this family has been saved by a woman in a black uniform. Amber nodded slowly. Ji-won left through the servants' passage with the recorder in one hand and the folded notes in the other. Her low black shoes made almost no sound on the tile. Amber turned back to the chrysanthemums. She finished the arrangement. Her hands were still steady. She counted the flowers when she was done. 7. At 5:15, the twins came back from Jeju. They arrived in a rush of luggage and perfume, sunburn already turning under the makeup on Sua's cheekbones. Sujin had a new sunglass case in her hand with a receipt sticking out of it. She dropped both onto the console table in the foyer without looking. They found Amber in the tea room finishing her second letter of the afternoon. Unni, Sujin said, and the word came out sweeter than it ever had. We brought you something. Oh? Guess. Amber did not lift her eyes from the paper. I don't guess. A shell. Sujin held it up. A small pink shell, chipped at the edge. From the beach. Oh, thank you. You should put it on your writing desk. I will. It broke a little in the bag. Sorry. It's fine. Sujin set the shell on the tea table between them. She did not sit. Sua leaned in the doorway, twirling her hair. We were talking on the plane, Sujin said. About you. About how gentle you are, how patient, how you never say anything back. Amber's pen kept moving. We were wondering, Sujin said, if it is because you know. Amber's pen paused. Only a beat. She started it again. Know what? She said. That he only married you because a wife makes him look softer. Softer plays better with the Americans he works with. Softer plays better with the courts. Softer. Sujin tilted her head, considering the word. Charitable, even. Sua, from the doorway. Charity. You have been, Sujin said, a very good charity, Unni. Amber wrote the word out. Sincerely. At the bottom of the letter, she signed her name under it. She capped the pen. She looked up. Sujin's smile did not move. Was there anything else? Amber said. The smile flickered. Only a fraction. Then it came back. No, Sujin said. That was all. Enjoy your shell. They left. Amber sat very still. She heard the sound of them going up the stairs. She heard Sua say something and Sujin laugh. She heard a door close on the second floor. Then she picked up the small pink shell and set it, carefully, in the small brass dish on the tea table where Ji-won kept spare buttons. She did not put it on her desk. At 6, the front door opened. She heard Junho's step across the marble. She heard him pause in the hall, and the small sound of him accepting his mail from the second footman, and the sound of him climbing the stairs to his study. She heard the study door close. She looked at the clock on the mantel. She waited. At 6:14, the door of the tea room opened without a knock, and Junho was standing there in his black suit, with the thin tie loose at his throat and the koi tail just visible again above the collar. His face was very still. He held Ji-won's folded note in one hand. He held her note, unopened, in the other. He looked at her for a long moment across the room. Then he crossed to her and knelt down beside her chair and set both notes on the tea table between them without a word, and rested his forehead, for 1 second, against the back of her hand. Amber did not move. He lifted his head. How long? He said, very quietly. She looked at him. 6 months, she said. He closed his eyes. He kept them closed a moment. When he opened them, the room seemed a shade darker, as if someone had drawn a curtain she could not see. "You should have told me," he said. "I know." "Why?" She looked at his hand on the table beside the two folded notes. The gold band, the long fingers. "Because I wanted to give you a war you could win in a single afternoon," she said. "Not one you would have to fight for a year." He looked at her for a long time. Then he stood up. He picked up both notes. He put them in the inside pocket of the black jacket, over his heart, the way another man might have kept a photograph. "Wear the pearl-white dress tomorrow," he said. "Why?" "Because I want to see you in it," he said. "And because tomorrow I am going to be very quiet." Jun-ho left the tea room before Amber could answer. He carried the two envelopes with him, pressed against the inside of his jacket, and closed the door with the same care a man uses when he does not want a sleeping child to wake. Amber stayed on the low bench with the bowl of buttons in her lap. The broken pink shell sat on top of the buttons like something washed up by a tide only she could hear. She listened to his footsteps cross the wooden floor, slow, even, then the stairs, then nothing. Ji-won-han came in a minute later with fresh hot water. She refilled the small kettle, gathered the cold cup, and paused at the door. "He is on the phone," Ji-won said. "With whom?" "An old man in Insadong. The one who restores mirrors." Amber turned the shell over once in her fingers. "Thank you." Ji-won inclined her head and slid the door shut. Amber sat with the bowl of buttons for another hour. In her lap, the small round objects clicked against one another every time she shifted her weight. She did not touch the shell again. She did not need to. She already knew its shape. She had known it since the moment Sujin had pressed it into her palm and called it charity. Upstairs, she heard him speak twice more, once in Korean, once in something older, a formal register she had heard him use only with his mother. Then his door opened and closed, and the house held its breath and released it and held it again. Madame Hyaja Kang crossed the corridor at 9 and paused at the tea room door. She did not step inside. She only stood in the frame with her hands folded at her waist and looked at Amber for a while, the way a woman looks at a photograph of someone she once knew. "He asked me tonight," Madame Kang said, "which of my brother's storehouses still holds the old mirror from Insadong? The tall one, with the gold birds." "Yes." Madame Kang inclined her head half an inch. "That mirror belonged to my father-in-law. He used it in the reception room of the first house. Do you know what he called it?" "No." "The eye that does not lie." Madame Kang's mouth touched the shape of a smile and let it go. "My son will have you carry a heavy thing tomorrow, daughter. Wear the dress he asked for. Sit where he asked you to sit. Do not turn your face away from what happens in front of it. I will be at the top of the stairs." Then she was gone. Amber remained on the bench for another minute with her fingers around the brass key on the chain at her neck. The key was cool from the tea room air. In the drawer at the far end of the corridor, the small locked drawer of her writing desk, the notebook still held every number she had copied from the Foundation ledger. 14 wire transfers, 6 ghost accounts, 2 forged signatures. She could go now. She could unlock the drawer and carry the notebook down the corridor to his study. She could set it in his hands tonight and let him do everything at once. She did not move. Her mother's words held her still. Fight beside him, not for you. If she gave him the notebook tonight, tomorrow would be his day and hers would be nothing. If she waited, tomorrow would be a day the two of them made together. She went to bed at 10, he came in at 11. He did not turn on the lamp. He undressed in the dark and lay down on his side of the bed and rested one hand between her shoulder blades. His hand was warm. She did not turn to face him. She did not need to. They both slept. The next morning the truck arrived at 7. Amber heard it before she saw it, a low grumble on the gravel of the service drive. She was already awake in the pearl white satin dress he had asked for. She had chosen the small gold chain with the pale rounded pendant because he had once brushed it with his thumb and called it a sea drop. The house was quiet in a way that had a shape to it. She came down the 32 walnut steps in soft leather flats. 2 men in dark coveralls stood in the reception gallery, waiting with their hats in their hands. Behind them, on a padded wheeled dolly, was a mirror taller than either of them. The gold frame was old and heavy and carved with a pattern of long birds. A canvas sheet covered the glass. Jun-ho was already in the gallery, white shirt, collar open. "Here," he said, and pointed to the central wall. The wall he pointed at faced the Korean folding screen at the far end of the gallery, the six-panel screen of cranes and pine that hid the reading nook. The nook where the twins liked to corner her. The angle he chose was not an accident. From that spot on the wall, the mirror would look straight into the nook, and from his study, the door of which stood open across the gallery, he would see the mirror. Amber understood in the space of a breath. She let no part of it show. The men measured, they marked. They drilled slowly because Junho asked them to drill slowly. When they lifted the mirror onto the hooks, the older of the two whispered a small prayer in Korean and then wiped his hands on a cloth. Junho watched from 3 paces back with his arms behind his back like a man watching an animal be sedated. He pulled the canvas off himself. The glass was old. The silver behind it had darkened at the edges in the pattern of a slow tide. In it, Amber saw the reception gallery flipped, the folding screen, the nook, the reading chair with the ivory cushion that was hers, the low lacquer table where she left her book each afternoon. "Beautiful," she said. "Practical," he answered. He took her wrist gently and turned her by an inch until she stood facing the mirror. Then he stepped back until his own reflection appeared behind her shoulder, from the exact spot where his study door stood open. "You see me?" he asked. "I see you." "Good." He walked to the study door, closed it behind him, and reappeared 30 seconds later. He crossed the gallery to the folding screen. He stepped into the nook. He sat in the reading chair. He lifted her book from the low table and laid it on his knee, as if to test its weight. Then he looked up. "Turn now," he said. She turned toward the mirror. In the old darkened glass, she saw the entire length of the gallery reversed, and framed by the far edge of the folding screen, she saw him in the reading chair with her book in his lap. He was watching her. She lifted one hand halfway. He nodded once. "Practical," she agreed. He rose from the chair, set the book back on the table exactly where it had been, paid the older workman in cash from a plain white envelope, and thanked him twice. The men left through the service door. Ji-won closed it behind them. Madame Hyeja Kang came down the stairs while the dust still hung in the light. She stopped at the 5th step. She looked at the mirror. She looked at her son. She looked at Amber in the pearl-white dress. She said one word. "Finally." Then she descended the remaining steps, crossed to Amber, and touched her cheek with one cool hand. "Wear it often," she said, meaning the dress. Then she walked to the sunroom for her morning tea. Junho left for the office at 8:30. He paused at the front door and turned back to Amber. "I will be very quiet today," he said. "Read in the nook." "I will." 2 fingers on the nape of her neck. Then he was gone. The twins came down at 11, hair still damp from the shower, in matching short designer dresses and the oversized cream leather bag on Sujin's shoulder. They saw the mirror first, before they saw Amber. Sujin stopped. Sua bumped into her. "When did that come?" "This morning," Amber said from the sofa. Sujin walked up to the mirror and looked at her own face in it. She adjusted the wing of her liner with her little finger. She turned her head to see how the earring caught the light. She smiled at herself. "Ugly frame," she decided. "Old," Sua offered, joining her. "Peasant," Sujin said, "but the glass is honest." They lost interest within a minute. They went to the kitchen for coffee. Amber picked up her book and walked to the reading nook behind the folding screen. She sat in the chair with the ivory cushion. She opened to the page she had marked the day before. She did not read. She listened. The gallery was empty. Ji-won polished the lacquer somewhere down the corridor. The twins argued in the kitchen about a party in Cheongdam. Nothing else moved. Junho was not in the study across the gallery. Not yet. The morning passed. Amber read 3 chapters. She turned the pages at the same pace she would have if her whole life had been arranged around this book. At 1, Ji-won brought a tray of grilled fish and rice and small bowls of seasoned vegetables. Amber ate half. She thanked her. Ji-won took the tray away. 2 afternoons in the same shape passed like this. Read, wait, nothing. On the first afternoon, the twins went to Cheongdam and returned at 8 with 3 shopping bags between them. Amber walked the length of the gallery once around 4 o'clock. She stopped at the mirror. She looked at herself in the pearl-white dress and touched 2 fingers to the sea-drop pendant at her throat. She adjusted nothing. She wanted to know what her husband would see if he stood in the study door tomorrow. She saw a woman in a dress that fit her. She saw a face she had not been ashamed of at 11, or at 20, or now. Ji-won came into the gallery with fresh flowers for the low table and paused beside her. You look well, Jiwon said. Thank you. He asked me this morning if you had eaten breakfast. I ate. I told him you ate half. Amber turned to look at Jiwon. He asks me every morning, Jiwon added, since the day of the 7 envelopes. Amber let the sentence settle. She did not answer it. Jiwon did not need her to. Jiwon carried the flowers past her and set them in the tall vase by the window and left again. On the second afternoon, they slept until noon and left at 3 for lunch with cousins in Gangnam. Amber sat in the nook again. At 4 she rose, walked out of the nook, crossed the gallery, and stood outside the closed door of her husband's study. She rested her palm on the wood. The wood was cold and smelled of the oil Jiwon used every morning. Behind the door was the desk. On the desk was the pad where he wrote the day's numbers. She wanted to see the pad. She wanted to know what names he had written. She did not turn the handle. She returned to the nook and picked up her book and read one more chapter she could not have described afterward. Both nights, Junho came home at his ordinary hour, kissed the crown of Amber's head, ate rice at the family table with courteous questions about his Mother's Day, and went to bed. Both mornings he left in the ordinary black car. The mirror hung on the central wall of the gallery and reflected an empty room. Amber sat in the nook each afternoon. She did not read. She listened. On the third afternoon, everything changed. It began with a small thing. Amber went upstairs to the master suite to fetch a shawl. She did not need the shawl. She wanted to walk past the study door on her way back to see if it was open. It was not open. It was dark and locked, and Jiwon's soft cloth still lay across the handle where she had polished it that morning. Amber came down the stairs, one hand on the banister, and settled again into the nook. At 2:30, Soo-ah appeared at the far end of the gallery. "Where is Appa?" she asked, meaning Junho. "At the office." "You are sure?" Amber turned a page. Jiwon drove him. Soo-ah stared at her a moment longer than usual, then walked back the way she had come. Amber heard her whisper in Korean to someone up the stairs. Amber heard heels on the walnut steps a minute later. 2 pairs. Soo-jin came around the folding screen first. Soo-ah half a step behind. Soo-jin was carrying the oversized cream leather bag on her wrist and the plastic wrap of a new shopping bag from Cheongdam in her fingers. She held the wrap up to the light as she stepped into the nook, as if she had not seen Amber at all. Then she saw her. "Unnie," she said sweetly, in the tone Amber had come to know like a familiar illness. "Soo-jin." "You always sit here," Soo-jin said. She dropped the wrap on the low table beside Amber's book. "Why do you always sit here?" "I like the light." "There is more light on the sofa." "I like this light." Soo-jin lowered herself onto the arm of the reading chair. Her thigh was against Amber's shoulder. Soo-ah leaned against the folding screen and watched the entrance to the gallery. One eye on the front hall, one eye on the game. "Unnie," Soo-jin said again, and this time the sweetness had a small crack in it. "I want to ask you something. As a sister." "Ask? Do you think Oppa loves you?" Amber closed the book on her finger to keep her page. "Yes." "Really?" "Yes. Because we think, Soo-ah and me, we think he loves the idea of you, the story of you. Do you know how our people call a wife like you?" Soo-jin leaned in until Amber could smell the wine-red gloss on her lips. "A charitable wife. A wife who makes the husband look kind." Amber let 3 seconds pass. "You said this to me before. I am saying it again. You may leave." Soo-jin laughed. The laugh was practiced. Soo-ah laughed after her half a beat later. Amber turned her face toward the folding screen and looked at the paint of the crane on the third panel, one bird among many, and waited for Soo-jin to leave. Soo-jin did not leave. "Unnie, look at me." "No. Look at me." "Unnie." Amber kept her eyes on the crane. Soo-jin took Amber's wrist. Her fingers were cold and thin, and the grip was harder than a 19-year-old's grip should have been. She turned Amber's palm up on the arm of the chair as if to read it. "Your skin," Soo-jin said, "is too dark to sit at the main table." The sentence sat in the air between them. "Our mother," Soo-jin went on, in the same sweet voice, "is polite. She lets you eat with us, because she is a polite woman. But if Appa were not Appa, you would eat in the kitchen with Jiwon. You are too dark, Unnie. You are too dark for the main table of this house. You are too dark for the wedding portrait our aunt is having painted for the new year. Do you know how she cried when she saw you at the ceremony? Cried, Unni. On the phone with our mother, she said, my nephew has married a shadow. Amber's hand stayed still under Sujin's fingers. Do you think, Sujin said, your children will look like this house? Amber's mouth opened once and closed again. I asked you a question, Unni. Amber lifted her eyes to Sujin. She meant to say a hard thing. She meant to say the thing her mother had told her when she was 11, standing over her father's coffin. Dignity is a spine, not a face. She meant to say it, and her spine tried, and her spine held, and then something small and terrible broke behind her eyes, and a tear slid down her cheek along the line of her cheekbone, and she felt the tear as a betrayal. She had not cried in front of them once, not in 6 months. Sujin saw the tear before it reached Amber's jaw. Her lips parted around a slow syllable that was more breath than word. Oh. She lifted one wine-red fingernail toward the wet line on Amber's face and stopped an inch away, as if to admire something she had painted. Oh, Unni. Sua stepped closer. She was watching Amber's face now instead of the gallery. She had forgotten the front hall. Look, sister, Sujin whispered. Look at her cry. Sua did not laugh this time. Something in Amber's crying was not the joke Sujin had promised it would be. Sua's mouth stayed slightly open. Do you feel it now? Sujin said, closer still. Do you feel what this house thinks of you when he is not here? Amber closed her book fully. She placed it on the low table beside the wrap. She reached up with her free hand and wiped the tear off her own cheek. Slowly, she would not be the woman who wiped a tear quickly. Her mother had told her that too. She said nothing. Silence was the only weapon her mother had left her with. She had used it well for 6 months. She used it now. Sujin did not like the silence. Answer me, Unni. No. No what? No, I will not answer you. Sujin's grip on her wrist tightened. The pale skin under her thumb went white. You will answer me. In this house you will answer me. Appa may sleep with you, but you are not one of us. You will never be one of us. If tomorrow he asked you to leave, do you know what you would take with you? Nothing. The dress on your back and the shame of your name. A second tear had already crossed the same path as the first. Sujin saw it and softened her voice further, and it was worse than the shout would have been. Do you remember your mother, Unni? The one who cleaned houses in Detroit. We asked Appa about her once. He would not tell us her name. Do you know why? Because he is embarrassed. Not of you, of her. A mother who scrubbed a stranger's floor. Our aunt asked him at the wedding. What was the mother-in-law's profession? Appa said she rested. Rested, Unni. He lied for you because the truth would have shamed him at his own table. Do you know how many lies he has told for you in 6 months? I have counted. 19. 19 small lies. And each one is a stone he carries because of you. Nothing Sujin said was true. Amber knew this. Junho had told his own mother the exact truth of Amber's mother on the 2nd week of their engagement, in the sunroom, at 9 in the morning, over a pot of barley tea. Amber had been in the corridor. She had heard him. The word he had used was proud. The word he had used was worker. The word he had used was mine. But Sujin did not know that Amber knew this, and Sujin was very sure of the story she had built. 19 stones, Unni. And every night he lays them down beside you, and you sleep on top of them. Amber's breathing steadied on the 3rd breath. She kept her eyes on the 3rd panel of the crane. Amber kept her eyes on the 3rd panel of the crane. One wing extended, one wing folded. She counted the brush strokes she could see from her chair. 27. She counted them again. 27. Behind the folding screen, in the reception gallery, the light shifted, very slightly, the way it shifts when a door opens somewhere behind you and the sun in the far window meets a different pane of glass. Amber did not see it. In his study, on the far side of the gallery, Kang Junho stood in his open doorway with his hands at his sides. Black suit today, white shirt with the collar closed, thin black tie, wedding band on his left hand catching the light, his face without any expression at all. He had come home 2 hours early. He had come in through the service door. He had climbed the back stairs to his study without asking Jiwon for anything. He had opened the study door on silent hinges. He had heard every word of the last 5 minutes as if it had been spoken into his ear. In the old darkened glass of the mirror on the central wall, Framed exactly by the far edge of the folding screen and the near edge of the reading chair, he could see his wife's cheekbone and the wet line that ran down it. He could see Sujin's cold hand around her wrist. He could see the tear his wife did not wipe a second time. He did not move. Not yet. His left hand rested against the frame of the study door, and his thumb pressed the wood in a small, quick rhythm the wood alone could feel. His right hand hung open at his side. His jaw held a shape it had held only once before in his life, on a night when he had been 15 years old and his father had come home carried by 2 men. His mother had told him that night to remember the shape of his own face and to use it only twice in his life. This was the second time. Above him on the walnut stairs, Madame Heja Kang had appeared at the landing at some point in the last minute, silent in her plum hanbok, and she now watched her son watch his wife. She did not step down. She did not step back. She rested one thin hand on the top of the banister and waited. Jiwon had come out of the kitchen corridor with a folded cloth in her hands. She stood in the far doorway. She, too, waited. The whole house was watching. Only the twins did not know. The koi on his neck sat under the closed collar and did not stir. His breath went in through his nose in one long, slow measure, and went out again through his lips in another. His eyes stayed on the mirror. In the reading nook, Sujin bent close to her sister-in-law's ear and drew a slow breath to begin the next sentence, the one that would go further than any of the others had gone. Her wine-red lips shaped the first syllable. Her fingernail hovered again over the wet line on Amber's cheek. Across the gallery, in the mirror, her brother watched her lips move. He watched them shape a sound he would never allow into the air of his house. He watched his wife hold her chin at the exact angle a woman holds it when she is deciding not to break. He watched the second tear cross her jaw. He watched Jiwon at the corridor door lift the folded cloth to her mouth and lower it again. He watched his mother on the landing rest one hand on the banister and close her eyes for the length of a single breath and open them again. Then the thumb on the study door frame stopped its small, quick rhythm. His right hand rose from his side and settled the button of his suit jacket into place. He stepped through the doorway. His shoes made no sound on the gallery floor. He had learned that at 12, from a man who no longer breathed, and it had never left him. He crossed the length of the room the way rain crosses a windshield, without asking anyone's permission, and the reception gallery of the Kang mansion swallowed his passage in silence. 2 paces. 4. The mirror on the central wall caught his shape and gave it back to itself, angled just as he had specified to the Insadong restorer, and the pearl-white satin at the edge of the reading chair caught the light and held it. Sujin did not turn. Her back was to the doorway. Her back had always been the safest thing about her, in her own mind. She leaned closer to Amber, close enough that the tip of her wine-red nail hovered a finger breadth from the corner of Amber's mouth, and her voice dropped to the softer register she used when she believed she was delivering something clever. "The portrait," Sujin said, "the one Auntie is paying for. Have you thought about what they will do with your face?" Amber counted. 27 brushstrokes in the crane's stretched wing. She had counted them twice now. On the second count she had forgotten which fold of the screen she was on, and the count had turned into breath, and the breath into a slow gathering behind the ribs that did not have a name yet. "The painter is Yoon Chil-min," Sujin went on. "He does the family in Insadong. He does the ancestors. He knows how the Kang bones sit on the canvas. He will look at you and he will not know what to do." She paused, letting the pause do the work she believed her voice could not. "He will lighten you. He will have to. Or he will darken all of us. Which is it going to be, Unnai?" The 4th tear left the outer corner of Amber's right eye. It did not race. It moved the way honey moves down the side of a jar, unhurried, and it stopped at the line of her jaw and hung there and did not fall. Suah shifted her weight from one heel to the other. She had been posted at the folding screen to watch the hall, and for 11 minutes she had watched nothing at all because Amber's face had become more interesting than any hall. Amber's stillness was the kind of stillness Suah did not have a template for. The twins were fluent in tears they had produced themselves, and tears they had produced in maids, and tears they had produced in the tutor 2 summers ago, and none of those tears looked like this. This tear had discipline. This tear had a mother behind it. Suah lifted her eyes. She lifted them the way a person lifts their eyes when they have run out of ways to look at the same thing, and her gaze traveled without a destination across the low lacquer table, up the ivory linen of the reading chair, past Amber's shoulder, into the gallery beyond the screen. The mirror hung there in its gold frame, patient, angled the way a good witness is angled, and in the deep glass of it, framed by carved birds and by the doorway of the study, 15 paces behind him, stood her brother. Not entering, standing. Black suit, white shirt, the thin black tie he wore when the day was official. The koi curling out of the open collar because his collar was open, which meant he had come home 2 hours early, which meant he had not been at the office at all, which meant Ji-won had not driven him anywhere, which meant the answer she had given Amber at the top of the stair had been a small, clean lie, and the lie had been arranged before breakfast. Her lungs stopped. She did not gasp. She had been raised inside a house where a gasp was a receipt, and Kang daughters did not sign receipts. Instead, the color left her face in one smooth movement, the way water leaves a glass when it is tipped, and her mouth remained open on a shape it had been about to make, and forgot how to finish. "Unni," Sujin said, still not turning. "Are you crying?" She sounded delighted. "Is the wife of the quiet one crying at the mention of a portrait?" Sua's hand rose from her side without asking her for permission. It traveled the 8 inches to her sister's elbow, and it closed. It did not tug, it only closed, and its closing was a bracelet made of ice, and Sujin felt it and did not understand it and did not stop. "Because if you cry," Sujin said, "Auntie will know, and then the whole family will know, and Oppa cannot save you from a family that knows." The elbow was still frozen under Sua's fingers. "Sister," Sua said. Her voice had gone up half an octave and lost its consonants. "Not now." "Sister." Sujin turned her head an inch. Only an inch. She did not look at Sua's face. She looked at Sua's hand on her elbow, and her expression stiffened into the small correction she had used on Sua since they were 4 years old. The expression that said, "Do not embarrass me in front of the audience." Then she followed the direction of Sua's frozen gaze, because Sua's eyes had not moved from the mirror, and Sujin's own eyes traveled up the wall. She saw him. She saw him and her hand, the one on Amber's wrist, remembered that it was a hand, and remembered that it was holding a wrist, and did not know what to do with either piece of information. It stayed where it was. It stayed because releasing it now, in front of him, would be a confession. It stayed because keeping it would be a confession. Both were confessions. The room had run out of positions that were not confessions. Amber did not lift her eyes. She had felt the shift the way a body of water feels a stone. Something had entered the room and the surface had changed. She did not know what. She only knew that Sujin's grip on her wrist had gone from cruelty to hardware, from a hand pressing to prove a point to a hand forgetting to press because its owner was no longer inside it. And she knew that Sua, at the corner of her vision, had gone very still in a way that Sua did not know how to fake. And she knew that the gallery beyond the third fold of the screen, which had a low, continuous hum from the courtyard fountain and the small metallic tick of the antique clock by the western window, had subtracted a sound. She could not identify the missing sound, she only felt the shape of its absence. Her father had told her once, in the kitchen of the second-floor walk-up in Detroit, that silence was a room, and rooms had corners, and when a corner went dark, you kept your back away from it. She kept her eyes on the crane. She did not look up. Junho took 1 step forward. He did not enter the nook. He stopped at the edge of the gallery rug, where the wool met the marble seam, and his hands slid into the pockets of his suit jacket and remained there. He did not speak. He did not need to. His silence occupied the space the way weather occupies a valley, and Madame Haija Kang, at the top of the walnut stair, closed her hand around the polished handrail and did not move down and did not move up. She had told Amber the night before to sit where he asked and not to turn her face away, and she had held her end of the arrangement, and now she stood at her landing the way a witness stands at the edge of a river. Ji-won came out of the corridor. She did not carry the folded cloth anymore. She had put it down somewhere between the kitchen door and the archway, and no one had seen her put it down, and she moved to the far side of the screen and took a position by the sconce with her hands folded in front of her waist, the way she had been taught in 1994, at a house that no longer existed. Sujin's grip on Amber's wrist loosened. She did not release. She loosened. The bone of Amber's wrist reappeared under the pressure, and the blood came back into the skin, and Sujin's fingers stayed there like they had been asked to sit, and were waiting for permission to leave. "Appa," Sujin said. She turned her whole body now. She had been raised well enough that even in this she remembered posture. She rose from the arm of the chair with the small, measured lift of a girl who had been taught to rise in front of an older brother. Her wine-red mouth pulled itself into a smile that was younger than she was, the smile she had used at the funeral of her father when she had been 13 and photographers had been present. "You are home early," she said. "Yes," Junho said. That was all. One word. It went into the room, and it did not leave. Suah had not moved her feet. Her hand had not left her sister's elbow. It occurred to her belatedly that her hand on her sister's elbow was, itself, a piece of evidence, because the hand had come up before Sujin knew, which meant Suah had seen him first, which meant Suah had chosen for a fraction of a second to not warn her sister, and had then chosen the opposite, and now the fraction of a second lived in her hand and could not be taken back. "Amber," Junho said. Amber lifted her eyes. She did not lift them at Sujin. She lifted them past Sujin, over the arm of the chair, along the edge of the third fold of the screen, and into the gold frame on the wall. He was standing exactly where she had known he would be standing, on the afternoon he had put the mirror there. He was standing where the eye that did not lie could give him to her, without asking either of them to cross the room. She met him in the glass. "I see you," she said. Her voice was steady. There was salt on her mouth from the tear that had reached her jaw and finally fallen. There was a bright red half-moon on the inside of her wrist where Sujin's fingers had been. Her breath was 3 counts in and 4 counts out, the count her mother had taught her at the kitchen table when the man from the hospital had come with the envelope about her father. Her back was straight, because her back had been trained to be straight before she could spell her own name. She was not composed. Composure and dignity were not the same thing, and she had known the difference since she was 11. She had chosen the second. "Come," Junho said. Amber closed the book on her lap. She set it on the low lacquer table. She rose from the reading chair. She rose the way her mother had taught her to rise, from a table where insults had been served with the tea, without haste and without ceremony. And she stepped past Sujin without looking at Sujin, and she walked around the third fold of the folding screen, and she crossed the 7 feet of gallery marble to where her husband stood. He did not touch her. Not yet. He looked at her once, from the top of her head to the hem of the pearl-white satin, and he took inventory, the way a man takes inventory of a room after a fire, calmly, and then he turned his eyes away from her, because looking at her longer would have finished a thing he was not ready to finish in front of the twins, and he addressed the room. "Jiwon, sir. Call the study line. Ask for Mr. Osborne. Tell him he is invited to the house this afternoon. Then ask for Mr. Vance. Tell him the same." "Yes, sir." Ji-won's shoes made a small, dry sound on the marble as she moved back toward the corridor. She did not run. She had learned, in a life of long service, that running was a way of telling the world you had been unprepared, and she was not going to tell the world that today. Sujin's smile had loosened. The smile she had raised for the return of an older brother had been an all-purpose smile, and now it was searching for an occasion that fit it, and it could not find one. Her hand slid down the fabric of her dress and rested against her thigh. She glanced at her sister. Suah did not glance back. "Appa," Sujin said, "we were just—" "Do not." He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The 2 syllables sat down on top of the sentence Sujin had been about to build, and the sentence collapsed under them. "Sit," he said. He did not indicate a chair. There were 2 low chairs across from the reading nook, arranged for guests. Sujin took the nearer one. Suah followed. They sat the way children sit when a grown-up has stopped naming their name and started using their posture. Sujin's back met the chair back and did not settle into it. Her hands went to her knees. Suah placed her hands on her thighs the way she had been taught at the piano lesson at 8 years old, before either of them had ever been given a black card and told to remember which restaurants were quiet. Madame Haya Jia Kang came down. She came down without haste. She held the polished walnut of the handrail lightly, and the plum hanbok moved around her ankles, and she reached the marble of the gallery, and she did not cross to any of them. She stopped in the middle of the gallery, 3 paces from the mirror, and she folded her hands in front of her belt. She looked, first, at the mirror, then at her son, then at her daughters. Her expression contained none of the softness she gave to visitors, and none of the reproach she reserved for the accountants who quarreled at the end of the year. It contained a thing so much older than either that neither of her daughters could recognize it in her face. "Halmoni," Sua said. It came out childish. "Sit up," her mother said. Sua sat up. Junho took Amber's elbow. He touched it the way he had touched it on their wedding morning, when he had walked her from the room where the dresser had done her hair to the room where the priest was waiting, without pressing, only guiding. He led her 3 steps into the gallery until they stood side by side, facing the twins across the marble, and Madame Haijia Kang stood at their shoulder like a witness in a court that predated courts. Jiwon returned. "Mr. Osborne is coming from Yoido," she said. "He will be here in 35 minutes. Mr. Vance is in the car. He will be here in 20. "Thank you," Junho said. "Sir. Tell the kitchen to bring water, nothing else." "Sir." Jiwon withdrew a step and stopped at the archway. She did not leave. She had understood that she had been included in what was about to happen and that leaving would be a small subtraction from the arithmetic of the afternoon, and she did not do subtractions on a day like this. Sujin gathered herself. Her chin lifted. She had been sitting for less than a minute, and already the chair had begun to feel like an accusation, and her instinct, honed at 19 by 3 years of getting away with every version of herself she had ever tried on, was to speak first, to insert a version of the story into the room before her brother could set the story down. "Appa, whatever you think you heard." He looked at her. He looked at her the way he had looked at the man in the warehouse in Incheon on the 2nd Friday of March, and the look had 2 parts. The first part was recognition, which was worse than judgment. The second part was patience. Sujin had never seen the second part before. It was the patience of a person who had already decided everything and was only waiting for a signature. Her mouth closed by itself. "I heard everything," Junho said. He said it evenly. He was not delivering it. He was reporting it. "Not one thing," he said. "Not the loudest thing, not the newest thing. Everything." Amber's hand moved. It did not travel far. It found the seam of his sleeve, at the wrist, and it rested there, 2 fingertips against the black wool, the way she had rested them there on the morning of the 4th day. He did not look down. He did not need to. He felt them. 6 months, Junho said. "You have been running a smaller house inside my house. Today it stops." Sujin's hands opened on her knees. "Oppa," she said, and her voice had thinned. It was a joke. It was a stupid joke. "You know how girls—" "I do." The 2 words did not agree with her. They only conceded that he had heard her sentence and would not be answering it. "Sua." Sua's chin came up. "When you saw me in the mirror," Junho said, "you touched your sister's arm." "Yes, Appa." "Why?" Sufa opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. Whatever she had been going to say had been an answer she had prepared many years ago for a different question, and it did not fit. She looked at her sister. She looked at her mother. She looked at her hands. She said the true thing because the true thing had come to the front of her mouth before the rehearsed thing could arrive. "Because I was afraid," she said. "Of what?" "Of you." "Of me?" Junho said. His voice did not change, but the shape at the corner of his mouth did. It was not a smile. It was the ghost of an old grief. "Or of what you had done." Sua looked at her hands again. "Of what we had done," she said. The word we crossed the gallery like a small object thrown. Sujin heard it land. Her shoulders moved half an inch without her permission. Sujin turned her head sharply toward her sister. It was the first movement she had made since she sat down that was not permission-shaped. Her mouth formed the beginning of a name. She did not finish it. "Enough," Madame Kang said. The word crossed the gallery and settled onto Sujin's shoulders. Sujin's face lost another color. "You will let your brother speak," Madame Kang said. "You will not interrupt. When he tells you to answer, you will answer. When he tells you not to answer, you will not. If you try to speak over him, I will not be the one who stops you." Sujin's hands closed on her knees again. Sua did not look up. Junho reached inside his suit jacket. He took out the 2 envelopes. He did not present them. He held them in his left hand, at his hip, so that Amber, at his side, could see the small looping A and the neat block hand of the housekeeper, and could see that he had carried both of them, over his heart, for 4 days. He put them back inside the jacket. "Amber," he said. Yes. Go upstairs. Change. The cream blazer, the dress underneath it, the pearl earrings. Do not hurry. When you come back down, Mr. Vance will be here. You will sit at my right hand. Amber's fingers left the wool of his sleeve. She stepped back. She did not look at the twins. She did not look at Madame Kang. She crossed the gallery to the walnut stair, and she began the 32 steps to the second landing without haste, and her hand did not touch the rail. Halfway up on the 15th step, she stopped. She turned. She looked down over the gallery, over the low chairs, over her sisters-in-law who had shrunk into their own postures, over her mother-in-law's silver-black chignon, over the crown of her husband's head. She looked at the mirror. She looked at herself, small and central in the gold frame, pearl-white and steady. She resumed climbing. At the top of the second landing, she turned right. Her bedroom door closed behind her without sound. In the gallery below, no one spoke. The antique clock by the western window ticked once, twice. Jiwon's hands stayed folded at her waist. Madame Kang's hands stayed folded at her belt. Sujin's hands trembled on her knees, twice, and stopped. Sua's did not move at all. Junho crossed the 4 paces to the reading nook. He picked up the book Amber had set on the low lacquer table. He read the spine. He set it back down, aligned with the edge of the lacquer, the way she had aligned it. He walked back to the center of the gallery, and he took the position his father had used on the last afternoon of his life. Feet a shoulder's width apart, hands loose at his sides, chin level, and he waited for the doorbell of the front gate. 12 minutes later it rang. Anthony Vance stepped through the great door in a charcoal suit with a light blue shirt open at the collar and a tablet in his left hand. He inclined his head to Junho. He inclined his head to Madame Kang. He glanced at the twins without expression. He did not glance at Jiwon, because he had known Jiwon for 11 years and did not need to. "Sir," he said. "Sit," Junho said. "We wait for Osborne." Vance sat. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, Amber Powell Kang was standing in front of her wardrobe with her hand on the door and had not opened it yet. On the vanity behind her, the small brass key on its chain lay on the walnut top where she had set it before undressing. The locked drawer of the writing desk in the west corner was still locked. Inside it, wrapped in a piece of tissue that had once held a foundation ledger, waited the notebook that recorded 14 wire transfers, 6 ghost accounts, and 2 forged signatures. She looked at the key. She looked at the drawer. Her mother's voice arrived on her right shoulder, the way it had arrived on her right shoulder in every important hallway of the last 14 years, and it did not tell her what to do. It reminded her what she had already decided. A woman fought beside a man, not for him. A gift given at the wrong moment became a debt. A gift given at the right moment became a marriage. She lifted the brass key off the vanity and slipped it back inside the collar of her slip so that the chain lay against her collarbone. She would decide, downstairs, in front of 2 men whose names she had never spoken aloud, whether she opened the drawer today or tomorrow. She would decide when she saw his face across the low table. She opened the wardrobe and reached for the cream blazer and, for the first time in 6 months of marriage, allowed herself to plan the next hour out loud in the smallest whisper she had ever used with herself. "Beside him," she said. "Not for me. Beside him." Downstairs, the doorbell rang again. Jiwon crossed the gallery on flat black shoes and opened the front door with both hands, the way she had been trained to open a door for a man carrying a briefcase heavier than the briefcase looked. Walter Osborne stepped inside. He carried the brown leather case in his left hand and his hat in his right. He gave a small formal bow to Madame Kang, a smaller one to Junho, and then he saw the twins on the low guest chairs and did the arithmetic of the room in one glance and gave no reaction at all. "Where would you like me?" he said. Junho pointed at the long lacquered console beside the mirror. "There." Osborne walked to the console. He set the briefcase flat, snapped the 2 brass clasps, and lifted the lid. Anthony Vance rose from his chair and joined him without a word. The 2 men had worked in the same rooms for 11 years, and their hands moved around each other with the ease of men who had opened many things in silence. Junho stayed where he stood. He had taken his father's place at the center of the rug, and he had not moved from it. His right thumb rested on the seam of his trouser pocket. His mouth was closed. He looked, for those 90 seconds while Osborne unpacked the folders, like a man who was waiting for the last person to arrive at a meeting he had scheduled 6 months ago. Upstairs, Amber closed the guardrobe. She had changed. The pearl-white satin was folded on the bench at the foot of the bed with the sea-drop pendant coiled on top of it, because a woman raised by a mother who cleaned houses folds the thing she takes off. The cream blazer sat clean on her shoulders. Beneath it, the off-white midi, small pearl studs. The brass key was inside the collar of the slip, against her sternum, warmed now by her own skin. She had passed her palm across the locked drawer of the writing desk once, and then walked away from it. She stopped at the top of the stairs. 32 steps of dark walnut fell below her. She had counted them on the way up. She counted them again on the way down, 1 through 15, and on the 15th she paused, because that was where she had paused before, and pausing there once more felt like keeping a promise to the woman who had climbed up. The mirror caught her before the gallery did. She looked at herself for 2 beats. Cream, off-white, pearl. A wife dressed for a room where things were about to be undone, she continued. When she reached the last step, Junho turned his head. He watched her cross the rug. He waited until she was 1 arm's length away, and then he lifted his right hand and set it, palm open, between them. She placed her hand in his. He drew her to the chair that had been carried in from the sitting room and sat at his right, and he sat her down there, and only after she was seated did he sit himself. Madame Kang inclined her head 1 degree. Sujin's knees were pressed together so tightly the fabric of her mini-dress had gathered at the top of her thighs. Sua was staring at the carpet between her own 2 heels. Neither twin looked up. "Walter?" Junho said. Osborne straightened. He held a slim leather folder in both hands. "Ready when you are." "Anthony." Vance tapped the tablet twice and lifted it so the screen faced Junho. "All accounts open, sir. Live." Junho let the room hold its breath for the length of 1 slow inhale. Then he turned to his sisters. "How much did you spend this month?" Sujin's chin lifted an inch. It was a reflex from a childhood in which raising the chin had been enough. "Appa, how much?" She swallowed. "I do not know the exact." "Anthony." Vance read from the tablet without inflection. "Card ending 742, Miss Kang Sujin, 28,460 United States dollars this cycle. Card ending 918, Miss Kang Sua, 22,115. Jeju Charter, family account, 31,200. Cheongdam apartment maintenance, family account, 6,800. Bergdorf and Galleria, combined this cycle. Cross cards, 17,980. That is the visible balance to date. The month is not closed." Sujin made a small sound. It was the sound of a young woman being read aloud to. Junho watched her steadily. "You told your sister-in-law her skin was too dark for the main table," he said. The sentence carried no volume. It was placed on the rug in front of her like an object being returned. "Which table did you have in mind?" Sujin's lips parted. Nothing came out. "The one my grandfather bought when he was still a foreman on the docks," Junho said. "The one my father sat at every Chuseok until he could not. The one my mother sits at now. The one my wife sits at." "Which one, Sujin? Name the table." Sua lifted her eyes for 1 second and put them back on the carpet. Sujin's hands slid from her knees into her lap. "It was a joke." "Say it again." "It was..." Louder. "It was a joke." Her voice cracked on joke. "No," Junho said. "It was a strategy. You spent 6 months on it. Strategies cost money. I have been paying for yours." He held out his hand behind him without looking. Osborne placed the first document in it. Junho set the folder open on the low table between himself and the twins and turned it so the writing faced them. "Card 742, he said. "Cancelled at 1452. Anthony." Vance tapped. "Cancelled, sir." "Card 918. Cancelled. Every subsidiary card issued to either of my sisters against any Kang family instrument." Vance did not look up. His thumb moved 4 times. "Cancelled, all 8. Sua made a soft noise in her throat. "University fees," Junho said. Osborne turned a page in the folder without being asked. "Autumn semester, both institutions, tuition and residence, currently paid in advance to December. Refund what can be refunded to the family account. Discontinue standing payment for the spring semester and every semester after." Osborne wrote a line on the top of the page and initialed it. "Notified in writing by close of business tomorrow, sir. Appa." That was Sujin. Junho did not turn his head. Cars. Vance read. The white coupe registered to Miss Sujin. The gray sedan registered to Miss Sua. Both leased through Kang Holdings. Repossess both. Today. Send the driver with the transporter. Repossession initiated, sir. Appa. Sujin was leaning forward now. Her hair had come partly loose at the temple. Appa. Please, at least the travel. Vance looked up briefly at her and back at his tablet. Miss Sujin holds tickets to Milan, departing next Thursday. Miss Sua holds an open return to Los Angeles. Cancel Milan, void Los Angeles. Freeze passports at the family level. Any international movement in the next 6 months requires my mother's countersignature and mine. Vance tapped. Cancelled, voided, flag placed. Sujin's shoulders had begun to tremble. It was a very small tremble, the kind that is not visible from 10 feet away. Amber, seated at Junho's right, could see it. She kept her hands folded on her lap. She did not speak. The apartment, Junho said. Osborne opened the second folder. The 2-bedroom in Cheongdam, held in the name of Kang Holdings, occupied by the Misses under a courtesy lease of 1 per month. Terminate the courtesy lease at midnight tonight. Return the unit to the corporate pool. The domestic staff continues on payroll under my mother's household. They are blameless. Osborne wrote and initialed. Terminated at midnight, sir. Notice will be delivered by the doorman before the misses arrive. Sujin turned her head very slowly and looked at her mother. Madame Hyaja Kang stood where she had been standing since the beginning. Her hands were folded at the belt of the plum hanbok. Her chin was level. She met her daughter's gaze without softness, and then, when the moment had held long enough, she looked past her, at the mirror, and inclined her head 1 degree toward Junho. Continue, she said. Sujin closed her eyes. The luxury accounts, Junho said. Bergdorf, Galleria, Chanel Cheongdam, Hermes, the tailor in Nanhyeon, every open house account and every personal shopper on retainer. Vance's thumb moved down the tablet. 10 accounts across 2 currencies. Close them all. Settle outstanding balances against my personal account. From this hour, there is no Kang household credit at any of those doors for either of my sisters. Closed, sir. Notification sending. The allowance. Vance did not need to look. He had known this number for years. Monthly transfer of 12,000 United States dollars from Kang Holdings, split evenly, standing since the misses turned 18. Suspended, effective this month, not paused, suspended. Suspended, sir. The room held for 1 full breath. Jiwon, by the archway, shifted her weight from her right foot to her left. She had waited on this family for 12 years, and she had learned that the sound of a household changing shape is a very quiet sound. She heard it now. Vance turned the tablet toward Junho and offered him the screen, so the record could be initialed with a fingertip. Junho signed it without reading. He had read it in his head 3 nights ago at his desk under a green lamp, and he had read it again in his head this morning in the car on the way to the office he had left early on purpose. Madame Kang crossed the rug once, slowly, and stopped behind her daughters. She placed her hand, briefly, on the crown of Sua's head. Sua closed her eyes at the contact. Then Madame Kang crossed back to her position and folded her hands again at the belt of the plum hanbok. It was the first time she had touched either of the twins in 6 weeks. Sujin saw the touch. She saw it land on the sister and not on her. Her lower lip curled inward between her teeth. She held it there. Amber watched the small procession of that touch across the rug and back, and she understood something about the mother of her husband that she had suspected for months and had never had confirmed. Madame Hyeja Kang loved her daughters. She had not stopped loving them. She had only stopped mistaking the love for permission. Junho tapped the arm of Amber's chair once with his index finger. Not for her, for himself. A metronome mark, the signal that the next movement of the piece was about to begin. Amber lifted her eyes for the first time. She looked at the twins across the small distance of the gallery. Sujin's hair had come more loose. Sua's mouth was open a fraction. There was, in Amber, no triumph. There was a woman watching the taking apart of a machine that had run over her for 6 months, and she watched it the way a nurse watches a heart come back on a monitor, with attention, without heat. Junho felt her look. He turned his head 1 small degree toward her. He did not need her permission. He wanted her presence. She gave it by staying. Walter. Osborne came a step closer with a third folder, thicker than the first two. He held it flat on both palms like a plate. The instrument we prepared in April, sir. Yes. Would you like me to read the summary aloud for the record? Read it. Osborne opened the folder. He cleared his throat once. He read like a man who has read many wills to many rooms and has learned that the reader's job is to be a clear window and not a curtain. Draft instrument, dated the 12th of April this year, provides for the division upon the principal's discretion or upon designated events of 22% of the private Kang estate between the two named beneficiaries, Kang Soo-jin and Kang Soo-ah, in equal shares, with attached trust structures, staggered vestings at ages 25, 30, and 35, and continuing stipends indexed to inflation. Provides also for controlling interest, jointly held between the two beneficiaries, in the Kang Family Foundation, subject to the standing charter. Soo-jin's head came up. 22%, Junho said. He was speaking to Osborne, but the words were arranged for the twins. That was what I intended to leave you. Not because the family owed you an inheritance you had earned, because you are my sisters, and my father would have wanted it, and because I have carried you since he died the way a brother carries what a brother is given to carry. Soo-jin was crying. It was quiet, and it was ugly, and it was the first real thing she had shown in this house in a long time. Soo-ah reached across the small space between the chairs and took her sister's wrist. Her fingers were cold. Walter? Junho said. Sir? Void it. Osborne turned the top page. He drew a long diagonal line across the face of it with the fountain pen from his inner pocket. He wrote the date and the hour. He initialed. Vance stepped in and countersigned as witness on the corresponding page of the digital instrument on the tablet. Osborne closed the folder and set it flat on the console. It made a small dry sound against the wood. The instrument is void, sir. Soo-jin folded forward at the waist. Her forehead came almost to her knees. Her back moved with a rhythm that had nothing decorative in it. Soo-ah kept holding her wrist and stared at the floor with wet eyes. Amber breathed in 3. She breathed out 4. Junho turned to Osborne again. He did not raise his voice. He had not raised it once. The foundation. Osborne set a fourth folder on the console with a care that suggested he had been waiting to set it there for a very long time. The Kang Family Foundation, he said, chartered by your grandfather in 1971. Reactivated in 98 by your father. Current controlling trustee, yourself, as head of house. Standing bylaws permit the head of house to transfer controlling trusteeship at any time, by signed instrument, to a spouse of the head of house, subject only to the acceptance of the transferee. Junho did not look at Amber yet. He looked at the twins. You will hear this next part with your eyes on my wife, he said, because it is her name in the sentence, and you owe her that much of a face. Soo-jin lifted her head. Her makeup had run in one thin line from the outer corner of her left eye to the edge of her jaw. Soo-ah lifted her head next. They both looked at Amber. Amber met them. She did not lift her chin. She did not lower it. She was there. Walter, Junho said. Osborne read, by this instrument, executed this day, in the presence of the household and of the undersigned counsel and witness, the controlling trusteeship of the Kang Family Foundation is transferred from Kang Junho, head of house, to Amber Powell Kang, spouse of the head of house, effective upon her signature below. Osborne turned the folder so its long side faced Amber. He set the fountain pen across the page. Amber looked at Junho. He met her look. He did not smile. He did not need to. His right hand came to rest for 1 second on the arm of her chair, palm down, thumb along the wood, a gesture from the night in the tea room, translated for public daylight. Beside me, he said, very low. Not for me. Beside me. She heard the sentence she had said to her own bedroom mirror an hour ago come back to her from her husband's mouth. Her hand did not tremble. She rose 1 inch to reach the pen, took it, brought it to the line, and wrote Amber Powell Kang in a small looping A that no one in this room, if they were honest, had ever taken seriously enough. Osborne noted the time beside the signature. Vance recorded the transfer on the tablet. It took 4 seconds. The foundation belonged to her. Madame Kang closed her eyes for a beat. When she opened them, they were bright. She did not cry. She had cried enough for one lifetime in this house. Sujin was staring at Amber's hand on the pen, as if the hand had betrayed a private confidence. You, she said. It came out thin. You. Junho waited. Oppa. Sujin's voice climbed. Appa, the foundation is family. The foundation is a promise my grandfather made to widows on the docks when nobody was making promises to them, Junho said. It has never been yours. It has been in your reach, because I did not close the door. Today I close it. Sujin's mouth worked, but she is. Choose the next word carefully, Sujin. She did not choose it. She swallowed it. Her chin dropped. Amber set the pen down on the folder. She did it gently. The tip touched the paper without a scratch. She folded her hands back on her lap. She looked, for a moment, at the pale ceiling of the gallery, at the plaster medallion around the light fixture, at the small brown crack that ran from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and had been there since the year Junho's father died. Then she brought her eyes down. She looked at her husband. Junho, she said. It was the first time she had spoken since she had come down the stairs. Everyone in the room heard her use his given name in front of the household. Madame Kang did not move. Osborne watched the tablet. Vance kept his thumb on the edge of the screen. Yes. Before Walter closes his briefcase, she said, there is something you should know that I have been carrying for 11 days. Junho's face did not change. His right hand, which had returned to his own knee, opened once and closed once. Say it. Amber's left hand came up to the collar of the slip beneath the blazer. She drew out the brass key on its thin cord. She lifted the cord over her head with both hands, working the key past the ends of her hair, and she laid the key on the low table between herself and her husband. Upstairs, she said, in my writing desk. Locked drawer, left side. There is a notebook. Inside the notebook, there are numbers. Wire transfers, 14 of them, out of the Foundation's operating account into 6 shell accounts across 3 banks. There are 2 signatures on the release forms that were forged. The handwriting is a fair imitation of yours. It is not yours. Sujin's back went straight. Sua's hand tightened on her sister's wrist. Amber did not look at either twin. She kept her eyes on her husband. I compiled the list 2 weeks ago. I confirmed it 11 days ago. I did not bring it to you then. I wanted to be the wife who put a finished thing in your hand, and not a suspicion. I wanted the war to be a single afternoon and not a year. Junho's jaw shifted 1 small degree. I am telling you now, Amber said, because the Foundation is mine as of 4 minutes ago, and the numbers in that notebook are the first thing on my desk on the first day of my trusteeship, and because I do not want your first act as my husband on this side of the mirror to be based on anything I chose to keep from you. The room was very quiet. Osborne, without being told, laid his palm on the closed briefcase and left it there. He was a lawyer of a certain generation. He knew when to be a piece of furniture. Junho reached for the brass key. He picked it up. It was still warm. He held it for 1 heartbeat, then he handed it, without looking, back to his wife. Go get the notebook, he said. Yes. Anthony goes with you to the door of the room, not inside. You bring it down yourself. Yes. Amber rose. She walked back across the rug, past the twins without a glance, past the mirror without a glance, and up the walnut stairs. This time she did not pause on the 15th step. Vance followed at the correct distance, tablet under his arm, and stopped at the threshold of the writing room, and turned his back to the door with the discretion of a man who had spent his career learning where not to look. In the gallery, Junho at last turned his head to the twins. He did not speak for a long moment. He watched them. Sujin had gone white in a way that was not a blush leaving her face. It was color leaving the muscle of her cheeks, the way color leaves the face of a person who understands, finally and all at once, that the road they were walking on has been a plank across a shaft the whole time. 14 wires, Junho said, almost to himself. 6 accounts, 2 forged signatures. He looked at Osborne. Walter. Sir. Whatever my wife brings down that stair in the next 4 minutes, you and Anthony will take a copy. And by tomorrow at noon, I want 3 things. A quiet audit through the compliance officer, a preservation letter to each of the 3 banks, and a private conversation, in this house, between me and whichever of my sisters signed my father's name. Sujin made a sound. It was not a word. Junho let the sound hang in the air for exactly as long as she had let her cruelest sentences hang above Amber's head. Then he took it down. "You will not speak yet," he said. "You will sit. When my wife comes back into this room, you will look at her the way you should have looked at her the first evening she crossed that door. Do you understand me?" Sua nodded. Once, small. Sujin's head bent forward. It was not a nod. It was gravity acting on a young woman who had run out of postures. Upstairs, Amber unlocked the drawer. The brass key turned smoothly in the small lock. She had oiled it once a month. Inside, on top of the neat stack of foundation folders, and above the small green ribbon that held her mother's letters together, lay a plain black notebook. She lifted it. Beneath it, folded, was a single sheet of paper she had written the night before Jiwon brought her the recorder. She glanced at the sheet, at her own small looping A at the bottom, and she closed the drawer without taking it. She held the notebook flat against her chest with both hands, and she walked back to the top of the stairs. She looked down. Below her, on the rug her husband's grandfather had bought when he was still a foreman on the docks, stood her husband, her mother-in-law, the family lawyer, the family accountant, the family housekeeper by the archway, and two young women who no longer had cards, cars, apartments, tuition, passports, allowances, house accounts, or a piece of the Kang estate written in their name. Amber took the first step down. The notebook was warm against her ribs. Her mother's voice, in the private country of her chest, said the sentence one more time, and this time it arrived as an instruction and not as a prayer. Beside him, not for you, beside him. She did not count. Amber came down the 12th step and the notebook stayed pressed against her collarbone. The leather was warm from the drawer. She had not opened it in 11 days, and now the whole gallery would open it with her. Junho waited at the foot of the stairs with his palm turned up. He did not ask for the book. He asked for the hand. Amber gave him the hand. He led her back to the Kadera at his right and set the notebook on the low console beside Osborne's papers, as if he were setting down a piece of the estate that had always been theirs. Osborne opened his own folder. Vance angled the tablet. Jiwon moved one step forward from the archway, then remembered she was not called and stopped where she stood. "Read the first page," Junho said. Amber sat. She opened the notebook. The shave brass was back around her neck, but the cord felt lighter now that the drawer was empty. She turned to the page with the first entry, a line she had written in the sunroom at 10 in the evening, 12 days earlier, in a hand so steady she barely recognized it as hers. January 22nd, she read. 18,000 United States dollars. Kang Family Foundation operating account into a receiver labeled Blue Crane Holdings. Blue Crane Holdings does not appear on any foundation vendor list. Sujin's shoulders came up half an inch. Sua looked at the tapete. February 9th, Amber read. 22,500. Same route. Second receiver. Silver Ridge Consulting. Silver Ridge Consulting does not appear on any foundation vendor list. Third, Amber said. March 4th. 31,200. New receiver. Bright Harbor Trust. Not on the list. She read 4 more. She read them the way a nurse reads chart entries. Numbers, dates, names of shells, no adjectives. The room absorbed each line and gave nothing back except the sound of Vance's stylus taking the same numbers onto the tablet. Junho let her finish. There are 7 more, Amber said. She closed the notebook one finger at a time. The last one was signed on the 6th of this month. The pen used to sign it was a Caneta Tintero. I can tell because the ink pooled in the loop of the K. Osborne raised his head. His fountain pen was on the console. Not mine, Osborne said quietly. No, Amber said. Not yours. Junho put 2 fingers against the edge of the notebook. He turned it toward Osborne. Osborne opened the section Amber's paper marker had flagged. He looked at the signature on the wire authorization. He looked at the signature on the file copy of a foundation grant Junho himself had signed 3 years earlier, which Vance had pulled up on the tablet as a reference. He looked back at the wire. Very close, Osborne said. Very careful. But not mine, Junho said. Not yours. Junho stood up. He did not walk over to the Gemius. He walked to the Espello. He straightened the frame by a 1/4 degree. Then he came back and sat down again, with the same economy that had put him in the chair the first time. Sujin, he said. Sua. Which of you signed my father's name? The room held. Sujin's mouth opened and closed. She looked at the metal how on the ceiling. She looked at the tapete. Her hand found her sister's wrist and did not let go. "Neither of us," Sujin said. "Appa, neither of us would—" "That is one lie," Junho said. His voice had not risen. "You are permitted 3 today. I am counting." Sua made a small sound in her throat. It was not a word. It was the sound of a decision arriving before its owner was ready for it. "I wrote them," Sua said. Sujin turned her whole face on her sister. "I wrote them," Sua said again. She was looking at Junho, not at Sujin. "I have a good hand. I copied Appa's signature from the frame in the study when I was 15. I practiced on wax paper. Unni told me it was for a game." She stopped. She tried the next sentence twice before it came. "It was not a game." Sujin's face went the color of the tapete under the lamp. "Sister," Sujin said. "Sister, do not—" "Unni asked me to sign them," Sua said. She was speaking to Junho, now the way small children speak to teachers when they have finally understood there is no room left. "Every one of them," she said. "The money was going to a friend who needed it." She said Appa would have said yes. Madame Hee-ja Kang, who had been standing 3 steps from the Espello with her hands folded on her jade ring, moved for the first time since Vance had walked in. She crossed the tapete once, slowly, and stopped in front of Sua. She put her palm against the top of Sua's head. She left it there for the length of a breath, and then she took it away. She did not touch Sujin. She went and stood behind Amber's chair. "Continue," Madame Kang said. "Osborne," Junho said. "Add to your list. Sua is the hand, Sujin is the will. The instruction to falsify was Sujin's. The physical signature was Sua's. Both are named in the file. Auditor is to treat the will as principal." "Understood," Osborne said. He wrote it. Vance timestamped it. 1457. Sujin found the 3rd breath. "He would have given it to me," Sujin said. She set it to the ceiling first, then she brought her eyes down to her brother. "He would have. I only borrowed against what was going to be mine. You know that. Appa would have—" "You do not," Junho said. "Put my father in your mouth today." Sujin closed her mouth. Junho turned to Vance. "The wire trail. Blue Crane, Silver Ridge, Bright Harbor. Where does the money land? At the end." Vance worked the tablet with 2 thumbs. He waited. He looked up. 3 receivers, 3 banks, 1 ultimate account, Vance said. Cayman, held in the name of a Panamanian corporation, whose sole director is an attorney of record in Hong Kong. Beneficial owner listed as 1 Kang S. J. Kang. The tapete did not swallow the name. Kang S. J. Kang, Vance repeated. The middle initial and the surname were used to build a passable false identity. The passport photograph on file is Sujin's, taken, by the timestamp, at the studio near Apgujeong last October. "That was for the university," Sujin whispered. That was for a passport," Vance said, "in a name that is not yours, opened at a bank that is not on any list this family has ever used." Junho let 5 seconds go through the room. "Osborne," he said, "the Cayman account. Freeze it tonight. Any balance moves under trust to the foundation. Beneficiary of that trust, the foundation. Not me, not the estate, the foundation." Amber signs the receiving instrument. Amber said nothing. She only kept her hand flat on the notebook so that it would not lift with her breath. "The passport," Junho said to Vance. "Send the number to the office in Yeouido tonight. I will have it cancelled by breakfast." "Yes." "The attorney of record in Hong Kong, name." Vance read it. It was a name Osborne had heard before. At a dinner 2 Christmases ago. Osborne wrote it down anyway. "He will not represent another Kang matter," Junho said. "Nor will the firm." "Understood." Junho looked at Sujin for the first time in 3 minutes. He looked at her without any of the softness that his face carried around Amber. He looked at her the way he had looked at the Espello when he straightened it, as a thing that would either sit true or be removed. "You will come with me," Junho said. "To the study, now." Sujin's hand tightened on Sua's wrist. Sua gently uncurled the fingers, one by one, as if the wrist under them were her own child's, and set the hand back down on Sujin's own knee. "Go, sister," Sua said. Sujin stood. Her heels were still on. She had put them on that morning to walk to the coffee bar in the kitchen, and had not taken them off since. She walked between Jiwon and the console, past the Espello, past her mother, who did not look at her, because Madame Kang was looking at the back of Amber's head, and up the corridor toward the study. Junho followed 3 steps behind her. He stopped at the doorway of the studio and turned back to Amber. He did not speak. He put 2 fingers on the base of his own throat, where the koi's tail curled. He held them there. Amber lifted her chin 1 degree. He went in and closed the door. The gallery had been holding a shape, and now the shape rearranged itself. Osborne exhaled through his nose. Vance let the tablet settle on his thigh. Madame Kang came around from behind Amber's chair and sat down in the cadera, where Soo-jin had been, as if she were determined that the seat would not carry the last presence that had touched it. She kept her back straight, her hands folded on her lap over the jade. Sua did not move. Her free hand had gone flat against her own sternum. She was breathing in 3 counts and out 4. Amber recognized the count from the outside of her own chest. "Who taught you that?" Amber said, gently, before she decided to say it. Sua's eyes came up. "Jiwon," Sua said. "When I was 8. When Appa was very sick." Jiwon's face did not change from the archway, but her hand, which had been at her side, came up and rested briefly on the strap of her apron. "Keep counting," Amber said. Sua kept counting. Madame Kang looked at Amber then. She looked at her for a length of time that no one else in the room measured. Her face did not soften. It did something more valuable than softening. It settled. "Daughter," Madame Kang said. It was the first time she had used the word about Amber inside these walls. Amber had heard the word in the pause between the 2 vowels before it arrived. Amber did not answer with words. She turned her hand over on the arm of the cadera, and Madame Kang placed her own over it, the jade cool against Amber's knuckles, and let it stay there. From the study, no sound. Junho had put Soo-jin in the chair that faced his desk, the same chair their father used to put them in when they were 7, and had lied about who had broken the celadon dish in the salon. She remembered the chair. She had been counting on him not to use that chair for her today. He sat on the other side of the desk. He did not open a drawer. He did not pick up the telephone. He put both hands flat on the wood. "You are 19, Junho said. Soo-jin did not answer. She did not know if it was a question. "You are 19, Junho said again. "I am 34. I have carried this family for 11 years. I have made mistakes. Most of my mistakes I made by giving. To you. To her. To the house." He looked at the pad on the desk. The 2 names he had written there were still there. Osborne, Vance. He did not turn the pad over. "You called my wife a shadow," he said. "In this house. In her own gallery." Soo-jin opened her mouth. Junho lifted 1 finger. Soo-jin closed her mouth. "You told her that our children would be a stain on a portrait," Junho said. "You said her mother rested. You quoted me in her mouth. I did not say those words. What I said, in the sunroom, to Oma, was that Amber's mother was proud, that she was a worker, and that she is mine." He waited. He wanted Soo-jin to hear the last word. "Mine," Junho said again. Soo-jin's face broke in one place, at the corner of her mouth. Not tears, not yet. Only the small collapse of a muscle that had spent 6 months holding a smile. "You took from a foundation my grandfather built," Junho said, "to feed a version of yourself that never existed. You made your sister write my father's name. You built a bank account under a false use of the Kang name, in a country you have never lived in. If you had done these things to any other family in this city, you would be sitting across from someone with less patience than I have." He waited again. "Say something," he said. "Not a lie. Not an apology yet. Something true." Soo-jin's hands were on her knees. Her nails, which had been perfect at breakfast, had a small tear on the left thumb where she had bitten it in the last 12 minutes. She looked at the tear. She looked at her brother. "I hated her," Soo-jin said. Junho waited. "I hated her because you looked at her the way Appa looked at Oma," Soo-jin said. Her voice was very small. It was not the voice she had used in the gallery. "I have watched you my whole life. You never looked at anyone that way. Then she came, and you did, and I could not carry it." "You could not carry that I love my wife," Junho said. "I could not carry that you loved anyone more than the house." "She is the house now," Junho said. "You did not notice when it became true." Soo-jin's mouth trembled. The tears finally came, but they came quietly. She did not lift her hands to catch them. She let them go where they were going. I need you to hear the next part, Junho said, because I will only say it once. She nodded. You will not go to Milano. You will not go to your friends. You will not go to any bed that is not in your mother's house. Starting tonight, you sleep in the room you slept in as a child. The one with the small window over the persimmon tree. Juwon will prepare it. There will be one lock, and I will hold the key. You will not leave the property without your mother, on foot, for 30 days. Appa. Second, Junho said. You will write, by your own hand, on paper, a full account of every wire, every conversation with your sister about the wires, every meeting with the attorney in Hong Kong. It will be delivered to Osborne by 7 tomorrow morning. If a single entry contradicts what the audit finds, the auditor's version is what your name will carry into the record. If the audit finds anything you did not confess, the police will finish this conversation instead of me. Sujin closed her eyes. Third, Junho said. He softened his voice by exactly 1 degree. It was not kindness. It was the only kind of mercy he had left in himself for her that day. You will not speak to Amber again until she chooses to be spoken to. When she does, if she does, you will use her name, not Unni, not sister-in-law, Amber, and you will look at her when you say it. Sujin nodded. That is the whole conversation, Junho said. Say yes or say no. Yes, Sujin said. Junho stood. He walked around the desk. He did not touch her. He did not kiss the top of her head the way their father used to when a lecture ended. He opened the door. Jiwon, he called quietly down the corridor. Jiwon appeared inside a breath. Take my sister to the room she slept in when she was 6, Junho said. The window over the persimmon. Bring her a glass of water. Bring paper and 1 pen. Not the caneta tintero, a regular pen. Yes. Sujin stood. She did not look at her brother as she passed him. She looked at the floor. Jiwon led her out of the study and up the back stair. Junho stayed at the doorway for a beat. He closed the study door behind him and walked back to the gallery. Amber was still holding her mother-in-law's hand. Sua was still counting. Osborne and Vance had turned their bodies away from the archway in the way people do when they want to leave a room the dignity of their own privacy. Junho came to Amber's chair. He did not sit. He crouched. He put his hand under her hand on the notebook and lifted it a small centimeter, as though he were checking the weight of what she had carried alone for 11 days. Heavy, he said. Not anymore, Amber said. He nodded once. He stood up. Osborne, Vance, there are 2 hours of paperwork I need done tonight. The trust for the Cayman balance. The auditor's engagement letter. The formal record of Sujin's confinement and Sua's cooperation. Amber's signing kit for the foundation. I want it all on this table before 10. Yes, Osborne said. Yes, Vance said. Junho turned to his mother. He did not speak. Madame Kang lifted Amber's hand slightly, laid it back on the arm of the chair, and stood. She went to her son and reached up. She placed her hand for 1 second on the side of his jaw, at the place where his father had once had a small scar from a hunting knife when he was a boy. She took her hand away. Your father would have done less, Madame Kang said. He would not have done better, but he would have done less. I am proud. She walked past him and out to the sunroom, where she would sit alone until dinner and would not cry, because her mother had trained the tears out of her at 19, and they had never come back. Junho watched her go. Then he turned to Sua, who had not been given an instruction and had therefore not moved. Come here, he said. His voice, for her, was different. Sua stood. She walked to him. She stopped 2 steps short. Closer. She closed the 2 steps. Sua, he said, you wrote his name on paper you should not have written on. That is not nothing. You will pay for it. But you told me the truth in front of a room, before I asked you a second time. That is not nothing either. In the account I keep in my own head, those 2 are not equal. The second is heavier. Sua's chin came down. You will write your own account tonight, Junho said. In your own room. In this house. Not in your mother's house. Your key will not be taken. Your door will not be locked. In the morning you will come to the sunroom and read what you wrote to me and to Amber. If she does not want to hear it, you will read it to me alone. Yes? Yes, Appa. And Sua. Yes. You You will not speak to your sister for 3 days. Not one word. Not through a door. Not through Jiwon. You need 3 days without her voice in your head to know which of your thoughts have been yours. Sua's shoulders came down half an inch, the way they had come down when their father used to release them from a lesson. Yes, she said. Go. Sua went. She went up the main stair this time, not the back. Amber's eyes followed her the whole way. When Sua reached the 15th step, the step where Amber had stopped both times, Sua stopped too, without meaning to, as if the step had a small weight in it. She looked at the espello. She saw a girl she did not entirely recognize. She kept going. Junho waited until the door of Sua's room closed on the upper floor. Then he sat down finally in his own chair beside his wife. He did not speak for a long time. Osborne and Vance moved to the far end of the console and began the paperwork he had ordered. Their pens made small, dry sounds. Outside, in the driveway, a transporter started up and did not idle. It drove straight away, taking the coupe Bronco and the sedan Cinza with it. Amber heard the engine fade past the gatehouse. Your hand, Junho said. She gave him her hand. He turned it palm up. He looked at the pulso, where Sujin's fingers had left a shadow that would not fully be a bruise. He put his thumb against the shadow. He held it there for the length of a breath. Then he brought her palm to his mouth and put his lips against the center of it, once, the way one seals an envelope. I said I would be very quiet today, he said. You were, Amber said. I need to be one more thing before the day is over. What? Junho did not answer immediately. He looked at the tapete, at the metal how with the small brown crack running from 1 o'clock to 3, at the espejo that had done exactly what his grandfather had bought it to do. Then he looked at Amber. Honest, Junho said. Amber did not move. There is something I have not told you, Junho said, about the day I came to Detroit, about your mother, about the letter your father left on the table before he died. I have carried it for 8 months. I meant to give it to you on our first anniversary, in the garden. But you cannot walk into a foundation you now own not knowing what I have known. He reached into the inside pocket of the Polito, the pocket over his heart, the one that had carried the 2 envelopes for 4 days. He took out a 3rd envelope. It was older than the other 2 had been. The paper had yellowed at the corners. The small looping A on the front was not Amber's. It was her mother's. He put it on Amber's palm and closed her fingers around it, gently, the way one closes a shell. Read it when you can, Junho said. Not tonight, not tomorrow, when you can, and then we will decide together what your foundation does with it. Amber looked down at the envelope. Her mother had been dead 9 months. She had not seen her mother's hand in 9 months. Her thumb touched the loop of the A, the way a person touches the face of someone who has been gone longer than the calendar can measure. She held the envelope very still, the way one holds a bird that has flown into the palm by accident and does not yet know it has landed. She did not open it. She did not cry. She held it against the notebook, against her own sternum, on top of everything else the day had put there. Her mother's small looping A pressed into the leather like a second pulse under her own. Amber breathed in 3 counts and out 4, the count the mother had given her the summer the father died, and the count Ji-won had given a girl of 8 on the far side of a sickroom door in the same year, and the count Sua was still using upstairs behind a closed door of her own. I can carry one more thing, Amber said. I know, Junho said. He put his hand over hers, over the notebook, over the envelope, over the 11 days and the 6 months and the whole quiet house, and he held it there, while Osborne's pen moved, and Vance's stylus moved, and the light in the gallery began, at last, to change color toward evening. Upstairs, in a room she had not slept in for 13 years, Sujin sat at a small desk that had once held her homework, and she picked up a plain pen, and she began, in a hand that was hers and not her father's, to write down the first true thing. Osborne asked for the trust receiver first. Amber took the pen from him. She uncapped it and held it above the line and felt the yellowed envelope press against her sternum through the cream blazer. She signed. The looping A stayed small. Vance countersigned on the tablet at 17 minutes past 7. The Cayman balance moved to a trust whose sole beneficiary was the Kang Family Foundation, and the room around Amber went a little quieter, the way rooms do when a thing that was moving finally stops. Junho watched the ink dry. His right hand rested on the arm of her chair. He did not touch her. He waited until she capped the pen and slid it back to Osborne, and then he moved 2 fingers to the side of his own throat, once, and looked at her. She returned the sign with the same 2 fingers below her collar, above the brass key. Auditor, Junho said. Osborne opened the engagement letter. The compliance officer's name was Han Do-young, senior partner at a firm on the 27th floor of a tower in Yo-Yodo, retained by the family since the year the foundation was reactivated. Amber signed on the client line. Junho signed under her. Vance timestamped. Preservation, Junho said. 3 letters, 3 banks. Blue Crane, Silver Ridge, Bright Harbor. Osborne had drafted them in the 20 minutes it took Amber to fetch the notebook. He read each one aloud, brief, formal. Do not destroy any record touching the accounts listed on the attached schedule. Amber signed each as chair of the foundation. The word tasted foreign in her mouth, and then it did not. Cayman freeze. Vance turned the tablet. A screen with 3 green markers and 1 red one that flipped to green while they watched. The corporation in Panama was flagged for dissolution at the first calendar of the new week. The Hong Kong director was already receiving a letter that would end his firm's relationship with every Kang instrument in every jurisdiction that would enforce it. Passport. A second screen. A photograph of Su Jin taken in a studio in Apgujeong last October. The falsified page adjacent. Both marked cancelled by the office of a friend of the family at the border authority. The friend would call in the morning to confirm by voice. The friend already knew what he owed the house. He did not need to be reminded. Amber watched each screen light and darken, and did not count her breaths. She did not need to. Ji-won stood in the archway with her hands folded in front of her apron, and Madame Kang stood behind Amber's chair with the jade ring resting on the wood a hand's width from Amber's shoulder, and neither woman spoke, and the not speaking was the loudest praise the room had held in 6 months. Signing kit, Junho said. Osborne opened a leather folder. Foundation letterhead. Amber's title under her name in a font the foundation had used for 35 years. Bank cards in her name only. A set of keys for the foundation office in Junggu, with a small brass tag that had been her father-in-law's when he reactivated the fund. Vance had polished the tag that afternoon. Amber turned it in her fingers once and set it flat on the wood. She signed 12 pages. She signed a resolution appointing herself chair. She signed a resolution creating a new program of the foundation. Osborne read the title of it aloud, because Osborne read every title of every instrument aloud, and this was the first time Amber had heard the words spoken by another mouth. Program for the Restoration of Dignity in Young Women of the African and Korean Diaspora. Amber's hand did not shake. She signed. Madame Kang moved half a step, and the jade ring touched the back of Amber's neck, the way a small blessing touches a thing. At 8:40, Ji-won brought barley tea. Osborne and Vance moved to the far end of the console to draft the confinement register for Su Jin and the cooperation register for Su-ah. Junho stood. He offered Amber his hand. She rose. They walked to the tea room together, not fast, and he shut the door behind them. The bowl of buttons sat on the low table where she had left it the night of the 7 letters. The pink shell was on top. Amber picked it up between 2 fingers. She did not put it back in the bowl. She walked to the window and slid the sash open and let the shell fall 4 floors down onto the gravel drive of the service entrance, where the transporter had taken the coupe and the sedan. It made almost no sound. She closed the sash. She turned. Junho was watching her with the expression she had only seen him give to his own mother. "That's the last one," she said. "Yes." He walked to her. He put his palm flat against the door where his back had leaned the night he asked how long. He did not lean. He said, "The letter." She took the envelope from inside the blazer. She held it a long moment against the flat of her palm and did not open it. She said, "Tomorrow, in the garden." "Yes." "With you." "Yes." He touched 2 fingers to the base of her throat, above the brass key, below the small pendant. She touched 2 fingers to the base of his throat, over the tail of the koi. They stood there long enough for the barley tea in Ji-won's tray to cool by 2 degrees, and then he opened the door and they went back to the gallery, because the thing that made the house was not romance, and never had been. It was the work. Osborne read the confinement register aloud. Su Jin, 30 days at the mother's house, perimeter defined, single lock, key held by Junho, confession due at 7 in the morning to Osborne, under threat of criminal referral. Amber did not flinch at the word criminal. She signed as witness because the Foundation was now a party to the fraud. Vance timestamped at 9:11. Osborne read the cooperation register. SUA, self-supervised. Own room. Confession due at breakfast. Spoken aloud to Amber and Junho in the sunroom. Silence between the twins for 3 days. Amber signed as witness. Madam Kang signed as head of household, which was a signature no woman in the Kang family had put on a document in 51 years. By 9:30, the twin registers were filed. Vance shut the tablet. Osborne closed the leather folder. Both men bowed to Madam Kang and to Amber, and Vance said, "Chair," and Osborne said, "Mrs. Kang," and the two of them went out through the front to their cars, and the great gilt frame of the mirror caught them briefly as they passed and let them go. Jiwon locked the front door. She turned. Junho crossed the tapestry to her and stopped a full pace short of her, as a son would stop before an ant. "You put the recorder on my desk," he said. Jiwon's chin lowered a 1/4 inch. "Your mother would have carried it herself," he said. "Yes. I owe you the length of my life." "You owe your wife the length of your life," Jiswon said. "You owe me a cup of tea in the morning." He bowed. He bowed low, the bow he had not given anyone since the year they carried his father in. Jiswon pressed her palm to the small silver cross at her throat and looked at Amber over his shoulder, and Amber inclined her head, and it was done. Madam Kang took Amber's arm. "Come." They walked to the sunroom together. Jiwon followed with the tray. The garden showed dark through the glass, the persimmon at the far corner already black against the last blue in the sky. Madam Kang set the jade ring on the low table between them and did not put it back on. She took Amber's hand and turned the palm up and looked at the place where Sujin's grip had left a faint rose ring around the wrist. "Daughter," Madam Kang said, "tomorrow you go to the Foundation. Wear the cream. Take the keys. Do not stand when they come in." "No. Sit as he sits, as my husband sat." "Yes." "You have earned my chair," Madam Kang said. "You will not have it. You will not need it. You have your own." Amber did not weep. She had not wept since the 4th tier in the gallery. She turned her hand and closed her fingers over Madame Kang's and lifted the older woman's hand and set the back of it against her own cheek. Once, briefly, and then she gave it back with the jade ring balanced on the palm. Madame Kang slid the ring on and looked out at the garden. "He will bring you to me in the morning," she said. "Before you go to Junggu, there is a thing I need to give you." "Yes." Jiwon poured tea. The 3 women drank in a small silence that was not empty. Then Amber rose and Junho was in the doorway, and had been for some time, and he took her hand and they climbed the walnut stair to the room. She did not count the treads. She did not stop at the 15th. She opened the envelope after she had changed into the ivory slip, on the edge of the bed, with the small lamp on the console throwing warm light across the paper. Junho sat on the floor at her feet, his back against the frame, one hand resting on her ankle. She did not read aloud. She read once, folded the letter, and set it on her lap. Her mother had written it 4 months before she died. In it, she said she had known for a long time that her daughter would marry a man who owned rooms. She said the letter Amber's father had left on the kitchen table the night he died had a line in it Amber had never been shown, because Amber had been 11. The line was, "If she loves a hard man, tell her he must be hard for her, not at her." Her mother had carried the line 32 years and had written it out for Amber 4 months before the cancer took her voice. She had asked a woman she trusted in Detroit to deliver it to Kang Junho if Amber ever married him, because her mother had done research on the Kang family the way a Detroit cleaning woman does research, and she had liked what she found. The last sentence in the letter was, "Fight beside him, not for you." Beside him. Amber closed her eyes. Junho's thumb moved once against her ankle bone. She lifted her hand and touched his hair. "I know," she said. "Yes." "She wrote it before I did." "Yes." "Thank you for carrying it." "Yep." 8 months, he said. "I would have carried it longer," she said. He rose. He took the letter from her lap and folded it once more and slid it into the drawer of the bedside table, next to the small brass key she had returned to her neck. He turned off the lamp. In the dark, she felt his forehead touch her collarbone at the pendant, and she felt the tail of the koi against the inside of her wrist, and neither of them spoke for a long time. At 7 in the morning, Jiwon took a tray to the mother's house. She unlocked the persimmon room herself with a key Junho had given her at 6. Soo-jin sat at the small desk in a plain nightdress with dark hair pulled into a simple low band, and there were 7 sheets of paper on the desk, filled front and back in a hand that had begun the night in a careful script and ended it in something slower and more honest. The last sheet ended with a line, "I hated her because I was hollow and she was not." Ji-won read nothing. She took the 7 sheets and slid them into a plain manila envelope and carried them back through the garden to the main house and gave them to Osborne, who was standing at the console with his coat still on. At 7:40, Soo-ah came down the stair. She had washed her face. Her hair was clipped back with a plain metal clip. She wore a beige blouse and jeans. She stopped at the 15th tread and looked at the mirror, and in the mirror she saw Amber standing in the sunroom door with Jun-ho at her shoulder and Madam Kang behind them both, and she came the rest of the way down with her eyes on the mirror and only turned them to Amber at the last 3 treads. They went into the sunroom. Ji-won closed the door. Soo-ah stood. Amber sat. Jun-ho sat beside Amber. Madam Kang sat opposite, in her husband's chair. Soo-ah read her confession aloud. It was 6 pages. She named the 12th of April as the day she copied her father's signature onto the first false authorization. She named the 2 mornings she had watched Amber cross the gallery and had thought the word shadow, and had known even then that the word was a small stone she was rolling toward her own foot. She named the night she had elbowed her sister in the reading nook, and named it as the first honest thing she had done in a year. She looked up. "Sister," she said to Amber. "Amber," Amber said. "Amber, I do not ask you to forgive me. No, I ask you to let me work." Amber looked at Madam Kang. Madam Kang looked at Jun-ho. Jun-ho looked at Amber. It was Amber who spoke. "You will finish your studies," she said, "with your own money. The foundation will loan the tuition against your future work. You will pay it back. You will work at the foundation 3 days a week in the program I am starting today. You will not be paid for the first 6 months. After 6 months, you will be paid what any junior of your age is paid. You will speak to no press. You will wear no logo of any house that touches the Kang name. Yes. Your sister will be offered the same terms in 30 days if her confession stands against the audit." Soo-ah's mouth moved and made no sound. "Then, she will take them." "That is not for you to promise." "No." Ji-won opened the door. Soo-ah went. She stopped once at the threshold to bow to Madam Kang and did not receive an answering nod, and she did not need one. She went upstairs to pack a bag for the foundation. Madam Kang rose. She left the room and came back with a small lacquer box. She set it on the low table in front of Amber. She lifted the lid. Inside, on a fold of dark silk, was a slender chain of gold, with a jade drop the shape of a leaf, older than any woman at the table. "My mother's," Madam Kang said. "Her mother's before her. It has never been worn by a Kang who took it from the family. It will be worn by a Kang who brought a family back." She lifted the chain. She stood behind Amber and set the pendant at the base of Amber's throat and closed the clasp under the fall of her hair. Amber did not touch it. Jun-ho did. "There," Madam Kang said. "Now go to Junggu." The foundation offices in Junggu occupied the top 3 floors of a narrow limestone building near the old post office. Amber arrived at 9:30. Ji-won had driven. Jun-ho had said he would come at 4 in the afternoon and not before. Amber climbed the steps in the cream blazer and the off-white midi and the pearl earrings, and the jade leaf sat at her throat over the small pendant Jun-ho had given her, and the brass key at her collar had been retired to the drawer at home because there was no longer anything in the house that needed to be locked from her. She sat at her father-in-law's desk. She read the audit engagement out loud to herself once. She signed 3 memoranda. She wrote by hand on foundation letterhead the first sentence of the founding document of the new program. "This program exists to give back what was taken from young women whose skin was said to be the wrong color to sit at the table their work built." At 3:30, Ji-won brought the twins into the reception room on the top floor. Soo-jin had come from the persimmon room with Ji-won at her elbow, and the perimeter had held. She wore a plain white blouse and dark plain trousers and no makeup at all. Her hair was in a low ponytail. Her hands hung at her sides. Soo-ah stood 2 paces behind her in the beige blouse and jeans, and her hair was still clipped. Amber did not stand. "Sit," she said. They sat. She did not offer tea. She did not ask about the drive over. She opened a slim folder and set 2 sheets of paper on the desk, one in front of each twin. You will read this, she said. You will not sign yet. Su-jin read. Her lips moved once and stopped. Su-ah read faster and reached the bottom and looked up. The terms are the same for both of you, Amber said. You will complete your studies with your own effort and with a loan from the foundation against your future work. You will spend 3 days each week in the program I have just founded. The program serves young black women and young Asian women who have survived what I survived, and worse. You will not be their teachers. You will be their assistants. You will carry boxes. You will fold newsletters. You will sit at the reception desk. You will greet each woman who comes through the door as the daughter of a house, because she is. Su-jin's fingers whitened on the edge of the paper. You will be paid nothing for 6 months. After 6 months, you will be paid a wage that will not cover the rent of the apartment you no longer have. You will earn back your own life with your own hands. You will not be forgiven. You will be permitted to try. She waited. Neither twin spoke. She set 2 pens on the desk. If you sign, you begin on Monday. If you do not sign, you leave this office, and you find your own way, and the family will not stop you, and will not help you. Su-ah picked up her pen. She looked once at her sister, and then she signed. She set the pen down. Su-jin sat very still. In the great mirror behind the reception desk, a slighter mirror than the one at home but from the same century, she caught her own face without paint on it for the first time in 6 years. She looked at Amber. She looked at the jade leaf at Amber's throat. She looked at her own hands. I do not deserve this, she said. No, Amber said. I will take it anyway. Yes, she signed. She set the pen down beside her sister's. Amber gathered the 2 sheets and put them into the folder, and closed the folder, and closed her hand over the top of it for a moment. On Monday at 8, she said, Jiwon will bring you both. Do not be late. They rose. They bowed. Su-ah at the door said, Amber, and Amber inclined her head, and Su-jin at the door said nothing, and bowed a second time, and went out with her sister. Jiwon closed the door. She turned. Amber was already standing at the window with her back to the room, and the late sun was on her face, and Jiwon saw the small movement of her shoulders and knew what it was and did not name it. She left the room and shut the door behind her softly, and she went down 2 flights and stood in the small kitchen and made a pot of barley tea for 2 and set it on a tray and left it on the sideboard by the elevator, because Junho was due at 4 and he would want tea and he would not want to ask. At 4 he came. He wore the black suit and the white shirt open at the collar, and the koi tail showed above the collarbone. He carried nothing. Amber met him at the elevator. He touched 2 fingers to her throat above the jade leaf. She touched 2 fingers to his above the koi. Home, he said. Home. They drove back to the mansion in a car. Jiwon drove and neither of them spoke. The evening was already pooling gold along the western wall of the garden when they came up the drive. Madame Kang was on the steps in the plum hanbok. She did not come down. She only lifted her hand. Amber lifted hers. They walked around the side of the house through the small gate that led to the private garden, the one only the family used, the one Amber had walked in only twice since she came to live in the house. The path was gravel. The persimmon at the far corner was bare. The sun sat on the wall. Halfway along the path, Junho took Amber's hand and stopped. He turned her toward him. He drew the letter from his inside pocket. He had taken it from the bedside drawer that morning without her seeing. He held it up so the light passed once through the folded paper. Then he tore it, once across, once again, and let the 4 small pieces fall into the small brass dish Jiwon had set on the low stone bench for this purpose. He struck a match. The paper caught. It burned in 3 seconds. The wind carried nothing. Now it is yours, he said. Not carried. Kept. Yes. He took her left hand. He lifted it. He turned it so the thin gold wedding band caught the last of the sun. He set his own left hand under hers, palm up, and closed his fingers so that his gold band came to rest under her gold band, the 2 rings touching where the sun rested. He did not speak. She did not speak. Above them, in the mirror inside the house, the great gilt frame held only the empty gallery and the folding screen and the reading chair, and no one stood behind it, and no one needed to. A magpie crossed the garden low and quiet, and settled on the wall, and watched them the way old birds in old gardens watch old things. Neither of them looked at it. Amber's thumb moved once against the inside of Junho's palm, above his ring, and his thumb answered against the inside of her wrist, above her ring, and this was the language they had made in 6 months out of 2 fingers and 1 koi and 1 small brass key and a bowl of buttons and a mirror that had already done its work. Somewhere behind the house, Jiwon was pouring another pot of barley tea, because there would be dinner, and there would be a chair for Madame Kang at the head, and Amber would sit on Junho's right, and the 4 unoccupied chairs at the far end of the long table had already been carried out to the storeroom that morning by 2 men from the estate, without instruction, because the house had understood. The foundation ledger for the coming week already carried a new line in Amber's small looping A. 12 young women expected at 9 on Monday. 2 new assistants would greet them at the door. 1 would carry boxes. 1 would fold newsletters. Neither would wear the name of any house that had once traded in the word shadow. Somewhere in Insadong, the painter Yoon Chol-min had received a small envelope by courier that afternoon, dictated by Madame Kang and countersigned by Junho, canceling the commission for the wedding portrait the aunt had ordered and commissioning in its place a new portrait, to be painted from life and not from photograph, of a woman in a cream blazer at a desk with a jade leaf at her throat and a folder closed under her hand. The painter had read the letter twice and lit a stick of incense. She said, "At last, beside you." He said, "Beside me." The gold of her band rested on the gold of his, and the last light left the wall. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever swallowed cruelty in your own home to protect someone you love, hoping silence would be enough? Have you ever held proof of a betrayal in your hands and stayed quiet, waiting for the right moment? And when that moment finally came, did you choose revenge, or did you choose to lift others up the way Amber did? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, silence, and character, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.